world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's live edition. It is Veterans Day 2012, November 11th. Today, in honor of Veterans Day, myself, Joe Joseph, and Ken are going to be doing special broadcasts. And Joe is actually going to be hanging out with me. We're going to be doing 4 hours here. And then we're going to be going on to Ken's broadcast for another 2. But Joe and I are going to be hanging out. We're going to be bringing on Johnny English, who's a host here at the network, and an Army veteran. He's going to be coming on next hour, hanging out with us for a little while. And we're going to be playing audio clips, commenting on them, going over things, talking about veterans issues, bringing some real issues to light today instead of running around just posting garbage on social media networks or an email saying, oh, I love veterans, honoring all those who serve. We love you all. Hugs and kisses, because it's just utterly pissing me off. In fact, before I get into things, I wrote a post about this. I guess you're going to say a status update, whatever the hell you want to call it on Facebook, one of those, whatever. I posted it in my little box there. And it's actually been getting shared all over Facebook. People have been copying it and putting it on theirs with links back to me. And it was just, I just spoke right from the heart, and I want to share it with you. Okay, so I'm going to read it to you really quick. Here we go. On this Veterans Day, please do not just post a picture or meme on a social media site or in an email about honoring those who have served their country and think that you have done your patriotic duty. That may sound odd coming from a veteran, but hear me out. If you really want to honor them, then stop agreeing to more endless war. Remember what USMC Major General Smedley Butler said, quote, war is a racket, unquote. We pride ourselves on our military and how great the men and women in it are, yet we waste their lives as if they are nothing, sending them to fight, kill, and die in illegal and immoral wars all over the world against people who they have more in common with than their own, quote, leaders. Then, if they come back, they're denied health care and benefits that were guaranteed in a contract they signed. Many kill themselves during active duty or when they are discharged and they become veterans. We are losing more people to suicide than combat. That is a major red flag if I have ever seen one. And if they make it through all of that, then they are labeled, quote, terrorists by the very government that trained them and sent them to fight and die in the first place. All this for what exactly? If you want to honor veterans, bring our military home from every base around the world, stop the mindless wars we are waging, take care of those that need it, and teach the future generations of this country and the planet love instead of hate. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's my rant for this morning in the opening of the broadcast. Now, getting on to things. Joe, thanks for sitting idly by while I ranted for a few minutes there, but I wanted to get that out of the way before we got sidetracked and I forgot about it.
Huh? What? Oh, yes, yeah, the rant. Yeah, that's it, yeah. No, what's up, man? That's good. You know what? Here's the thing. I mean, if you look back through history, typically when do vets get demonized?
When they come home.
When they come home, but why is that? Why do they get demonized? What do you think?
Oh, well, there's a plethora of reasons.
Well, let's just start with this. How about you get over there and you find out that, hey, wait a minute, these people that we're fighting, well, good grief, they're not as bad as we. What are you? What? Why am I here? And that's the first thing they do. They get over there and they say, "Why am I here?" You start to question.
You know how many vets I know that have said that to me? They have said, I woke up when I would look at Ryan, host right here on our own network, and a friend of ours. He said the same thing. He woke up when he was in Afghanistan fighting, and he was like, "What the hell are we doing over here?
What are we doing here?" Yeah, that's number one. And then number two, after they see the lies, and folks, a lot of vets actually, they're the ones that are out doing the freedom fighting when they get home. Many vets stand up against the same institution and the same government that they took an oath. You take an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and you don't really realize what that oath means until you actually get there and you find out that everything you took an oath for, you're violating when you get over there.
Right.
And then you get back and you speak out about it, you're a terrorist.
Exactly. So now suddenly you realize, there are more domestic enemies than there are foreign enemies.
That's right. And so the government has to incentivize military service to keep people subservient, I guess you could say. So not only do you have things like, the Montgomery GI Bill and all of the veterans benefits that come around, and it's great because I'll tell you what, for the service that the vets do and the sacrifice that it really is, they deserve every little bit, every morsel that comes their way. They really do. I mean, but at the end of the day, remember this too. It is a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice at the end of the day. And I mean, I served 6 years and I didn't expect a single thing back from my country. I didn't, because it's a sacrifice. That's what I did, but there are people out there these days, especially now more than ever, that are being injured in the line of duty for reasons that they shouldn't be getting injured for. For example, Gulf War syndrome. I have Gulf War syndrome. And as far as my doctor and I can figure out, it was from the anthrax vaccine. That's right. I was one of the inaugural bunch that actually got the first round of it when it was experimental. And I can tell you from beyond a shadow of a doubt, I feel the effects of it every day. And the most interesting one is the fact that I used to have a memory to where I didn't have to write anything down. I didn't have to take notes. I didn't have to do anything like that. And now I have to write notes. And heck, half the time my wife will send me to the grocery store, dude. And half the time I go, I forget things on the shopping list. I mean,
that you have in your hand.
That it's written down. And
that's a side effect of the vaccines. That's actually, if you research it, that's one of the things that happens to people. It affects memory.
Right. Oh yeah, dude. It totally affects it. But I can think back to the time when I was like, good grief, man, I can't believe I'm so like bumbleheaded. Really. I mean, this is crazy. And I remember I was about 24, 25 years old. And that's when I said, good, something's got to be wrong. And I went to the neurologist, oh, nothing's wrong with you and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I read a brochure about Gulf War syndrome that I asked my doctor about it. And, they started doing some tests and all that kind of stuff. And they figured out, hey, you know what? That's what you got. And that's what the only thing I can equate it to is vaccinations. But I mean, at the same time, they were chemtrailing over Iraq pretty heavily too. So you just don't know.
Well, I think it's a mix of a few things when it comes to certain individuals, but you were on a ship, so that narrows everything out except the vaccines.
Yeah.
So guess what? Look, I know plenty of guys that got damaged by vaccines in the military, myself included. So it happens more often than they admit. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a break coming up. Don't go anywhere. More with Joe when we come back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Joe, before we get into the other audio clips and veterans issues and stuff, there's something else I want to focus on for like 3-4 minutes. I just want to focus on this really quick because it's kind of this is going to sound arrogant, but it's kind of an I told you so. And this is one of the reasons I told you about this off air, how I kind of stepped back from being part of that alternative media news cycle. I still post articles and stuff, but I'm not doing it. I'm actually doing it against the normal cycle of viewers and everything else. And it has led to actually things, certain articles taking longer to get views than they used to and stuff. But I don't want to be part of this cycle of disinfo or misinfo. Even if it's not done on purpose, a lot of times it's done just because people jump on things and they take things for face value and run with it. And that's in the alternative media, that's not a good idea because we're supposed to be trying to do things differently than the mainstream, and it's exactly what the mainstream media does. Now, what am I talking about? Last week, during the Hurricane Sandy relief stuff, and actually it might have been even, I think it was last week. No, it was 2 weeks ago because last week, this past Monday, was the, the third-party debate. So it was actually almost 2 weeks ago now. And I talked about how, that was a while ago. And I talked about how there were supposed tweets on Twitter where people were planning on doing raids and all this other garbage, right? And they were planning on looting houses and all this other stuff, and they were showing pictures and a few news sources, I guess you could say, Drudge, InfoWars, and the Daily Mail, which you'd think that they would at least, and I'm not saying that they're, God, they're a great news source, but you would think that they would take like 5 minutes. They have a huge organization. They would have an intern or somebody do a little fact check on this before they actually ran with it. But no, none of the three did. And the reason why I bring it up is because with InfoWars, it shows an example. InfoWars is considered alternative media, and here they ran with this fake story. Jones went on air on his show and talked about how they were looting up one side of Coney Island and down the other. And I'm not bashing him. This isn't aimed at him or bashing him. I'm just using that as an example. It was complete disinfo. Why do I say that? Because the hashtag that said Sandy Loot Crew and those pictures that were put out were fake. First of all, half of those pictures were pulled off of Google. More than half of them were pulled off Google search. Some of them were linked back to Hurricane Katrina from 2005. Other ones were just linked back to random searches on the internet where these pictures were posted originally. So they weren't even real images that these people were taking pictures of. And I said this. I said there is no reason to panic everybody and go out there and report this like it's fact. If you look at the photos, it looks fake. And a lot of people, I caught flack for that. I caught flack because people were like, well, there's looting. Of course there's looting, and I addressed that. I played the audio where there were 15 looters arrested, not 1,500, okay? And this, oh, my God, the end of the world, they're planning things on Twitter. Well, first of all, if you come off like that, you're giving the government ammo to use against us to say, hey, look, see these social media networks, the internet, it's a bad thing. We got to clamp this down. So this is really bad on so many levels, and I know it sounds like I'm patting myself on the back and it's an I told you so moment, but it kind of is, because the people that put this out are a troll group. They call themselves the GNAA. And I'm not going to tell you what GNAA stands for. You can go look it up yourself. Just type in GNAA.eu and you'll see for yourself. But they're completely just a troll group. And they literally proved, they went out and set out to expose, how the mainstream media just jumps on stuff and runs with it, doesn't really do any investigation. And they did just that. And a lot of alternative media outlets, other than InfoWars, fell into the same trap. They weren't the only ones. So they're not the only, don't think that it ends with them. There are other alternative media outlets that jumped on it. And if I've ever said it, I'll say it again. I've said it time and time again, actually. We need to pay attention to things. We need to not just jump on stuff and run with it because it might get us hits to our website. And our advertisers will like that. Or we're trying to sell a DVD. And there's a lot of smaller alternative media outlets that are starting to act the exact same way and do the exact same thing. And I'm getting really sick and tired of it. That's not what this was originally invented for. This came about, the alternative media community came about because information was being suppressed. And now many of us are starting to behave just like the mainstream media. I won't say really us because I'm not included in that. I've stepped away from that. I still post articles on Federal Jack, but I do it completely against the news cycle, purposely. And it costs me hits to my website. You know what? I don't care. I'm not here for the hits. I had to sit down and decide what, it wasn't really much of a decision for me because I got in this for, the reason of putting out truth, not making money and not selling advertising space or DVDs. So it was an easy choice for me, but I had to choose. I had to look at the situation and realize that because I saw what was going on and I said, I don't want to be part of this. So I'm not bashing any one website in particular, but there are certain alternative news media outlets that are just jumping on things and running with stuff. And again, just InfoWars. So
you know what, buddy? That goes all the way back to Horace Greeley and, the 1850s and sensationalism. It's
big time.
Sensationalism sells. It's always been that way. People,
you got to sex it up, right?
Yeah, of course. There's a hunger and a thirst for knowledge out there, and what we're finding is that, just like one of those latest polls, 60% of the American public don't trust what the mainstream media tells them. And what's interesting is so the alternative media seeks to provide a, quote, alternative to the mainstream media, yet they act like the mainstream media, a lot of these alternative media outlets, when, they embark on the same practices. And that's what people don't trust. They don't trust those practices. And that's the thing is, if you want the straight poop, the truth should sell itself. You don't need to glamorize it. You don't need to make it any more attractive. It is what it is, and that's the thing is I don't understand why there needs to be such, fear-mongering, I guess you could say, just to get things out there a bit more. You know what I mean?
Well, let's just, fear sells too. Okay.
Of course it does.
At the end of the day, you have to look at why you're doing this. Are you doing this to sell DVDs and advertising space? Or are you doing
right
this?
On.
I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent. The reason I brought it up was because a hacker, one of my hacker friends, brought it to my attention and said, "Hey, by the way, I heard your broadcast about the Sandy tweets, and you were right on. Check this out." And I went right to the group's website, and they have an article written on there where they say we purposely did this to troll these people, and they just took it hook, line, and sinker. And it proves that. And it does prove that people will take certain things and just run with it at face value rather than research it. And I didn't want to become like that. I didn't want Federal Jack to become like that. If I post something and I find out it's wrong later on, I remove it. But I actually haven't had to run into that situation in years because I do, I take my time. And of course, it costs me hits. I don't have advertisers, but hey, I didn't get in this to make money. I got in this to spread the truth. So enough, blah, 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 patting myself on the back, whatever the hell you want to call it. It's just an I told you so moment. Instead of hopping on things right away and going, oh my God, they're looting everywhere. Let's calm down and report things accurately, because the last thing we need to do either is spread fear and panic, especially in a situation like that, okay? Because that could cost people their lives. So we do have a certain amount of responsibility. That's all I'm saying. All right, done. We're going to break. When Joe and I come back, we'll be getting into more veterans issues and back onto the Veterans Day special. But I had to bring that up really quick. It was rather important. Don't go anywhere. Joe and myself will be right back. 3 minutes. We are back. And getting back onto veterans issues, there's something I want to touch on. PFC Levina Johnson. Joe, have you ever heard of her?
No.
PFC Levina Johnson was sexually assaulted and murdered while she was deployed in Iraq in 2005. And I've talked about her on air before, and I've urged people to, make it an issue. Spread. In fact, I have a video called on YouTube called a call to action for PFC Levina Johnson, and people can share it. There's actually a petition, I think, at change.org. I think it was one of her family members or friends that put it together. This gets no coverage whatsoever. She was in active duty Army, and she was sexually assaulted and killed while deployed in 2005. And they don't think it was done by a fellow soldier. They think it was done by a mercenary scumbag that we hired, because this, after all, is a mercenary war, right? So this, her parents are convinced that she was murdered. The government, of course, military, I'll give you one guess what they said it was. Come on. What do they usually say the cause of
Drugs.
No. What's their next favorite?
Suicide.
Yep, bingo. She killed herself.
Of course she did.
And set herself on fire, I guess, afterwards. Or no, I don't think she was, I'm sorry, it wasn't, she didn't set herself on fire. She had burns because someone had poured lye on her genitals. So she killed herself and then poured something that would burn.
Yeah, something that would just like melt her genitals.
Right. And just
that's there. Great, yeah.
And just lay there. She was like, hey, what's up? Because that's what everybody does, right?
Well, there was a suicide just recently, I think.
Oh, no, I was correct. I'm sorry. And my memory wasn't faltering. And her body was set on fire.
Oh, so, that too. Okay.
So I guess she poured lye and set herself on fire.
Yeah. That's the way I would kill myself.
Well, and after she
Let me just pour some lye on my Johnson and then set myself ablaze.
This is after she shot herself, supposedly.
Wait a minute. So wait a minute. You're saying that
she shot herself and then poured the lye on herself and then set herself on fire.
No, wait a minute. Let's. Okay, so she is an active duty servicewoman, right?
Yes.
And she says, "I've had enough of this, by cracky. I can't do this. How am I going to kill myself?" Well, let's see. First, I'm going to mutilate myself by pouring lye on me, and then that's not good enough. Ow! Ooh, that hurts. I got to put an end to this. Let me let myself on fire. Okay, so woof. This really sucks. Okay, and then could it have happened like that? Like, okay, then I shot myself after I poured lye on myself and set myself on fire.
Let me read you. This is how they found her body, okay? And this is the government saying she did this to herself. I'm going to read this to you, and I want you to tell me if this sounds like she did it to herself.
Right.
Obviously she didn't, but I'll read this to you. Tell me what you think. The petite soldier's body was found battered and burning on a cot in the tent of a civilian contractor assigned to the Iraqi installation. Both Levina's eyes were blackened, her nose broken, her teeth were smashed inwards. There were numerous scratches and bruises all over her nude body. Somebody had poured lye on her genital area, and she had a bullet wound on the left side of her head. She's right-handed, and it appeared a flammable substance had been poured on her body and set afire. Despite the obvious injuries that could not have been done by the victim, the Army has attempted to cover up the cause of death with suicide as the ruling.
It's the standard MO, man. I mean, that's the way they roll. There was just a...
This is really unacceptable.
Well, I was just getting into this the other day, and what was it? What were we talking about? Oh, that's right. When I had John Hankey on, we were talking about, what's his face? Gary... What's
Webb.
His name? Yes, Gary Webb from the San Jose Mercury.
I don't think he I don't think that he committed suicide either.
No, but of course they say he did because he was able to shoot himself in the head twice.
I talked to Holland about this, Holland Van Nieuwenhof.
Yes.
And he interviewed Mike Rupert, and Mike knew Gary Webb, and Mike swears that Gary was really, upset and everything. And according to Rupert, I think that he said that Gary Webb did commit suicide. Now, I don't know for a fact that he did or didn't. You know what I mean? I mean, who knows? Rupert was close friends with him, so maybe. But I don't know. I mean, maybe Gary Webb did commit suicide, but I just don't. When people shoot themselves, I just find it. I find it suspicious when anybody breaking news like Gary was. Okay, and I mean, and they hammered him career-wise, but what he talked about wasn't fake. It wasn't disinfo. He was very much on the trail of what was going on. So, did he commit suicide? I don't know, but I just find it suspicious that people like him, or in the JFK assassination, there's people that get shot in the head with shotguns twice. You know, I mean, come on. Really?
That's my point. Is that, you know, it's not really believable. The forensic evidence doesn't match the claim. And that's the problem that I'm having, is with a lot of these suicides that happen that look suspicious. If they look suspicious, chances are they are suspicious, you know, and it warrants more investigation instead of just being blown off as a, quote, suicide. You know, that's my problem.
Well, they always blow it off as suicide. Remember, a lot of deaths, by the way, are covered up as accidents or not combat deaths. I mean, even, you know, if I die, I'm going to die with glory, in glorious combat like a Spartan. No, you won't. In fact, if you are still alive, when they get you into the helicopter and you fly away, you didn't die in combat. Yeah, that's right. That's how they fudge the numbers. Unless you die on the ground right there, and even in some cases, that doesn't happen. Remember, we have a lot of military men and women that aren't even citizens of this country.
Right on.
And they are used. I'm not picking on them. I'm exposing how they're exploited by a scumbag government. They say, you want to be a citizen? Come be our slave in the military and kill other people that look and are just like you, and we'll give you citizenship to our great empire. And you know what happens when those people aren't citizens and they die in combat? The numbers aren't reported. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they're very underreported, yep.
That's right. Sometimes they bury the body elsewhere. Oh, Popeye, they would never do that. That guy's a veteran. Really? They wouldn't do that? Let me tell you something. If the person has no family to cry out for them because they're in some foreign country and the government can just ignore it and be like, he never joined the military. What are you talking about? Must be some other Juan or whatever the guy's name is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That happens all the time. Don't think that the government wouldn't just leave you dead out in the desert.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be the first, certainly not the last. What's sad about the whole situation is that many people join the military with hopes of bettering themselves, and oftentimes they do. I mean, case in point, I joined because I graduated high school and went to college, and that first year, oh boy, let me tell you something. There was a lot of having fun going on in that college because that GPA just did not support going for year two. So, you know, of course, my old man said, oh, no, don't worry. There's always community college. But, you know, in my mind and in my heart, I'm saying, how can I do that to him again? You know, I just went and screwed the pooch for a year. And, you know, my folks were on the hook to pay the tuition. And look what I did. So I went down to the MEP station, and I went and I signed up to join in the military.
The military is like like the answer. It's like the cure-all for everything.
But I got news for you. I mean, there is an upside to certain things with the military. However, it's an upside before you know about what you're getting involved in. You know, because you think about, well, you know, more discipline, education, get some money for college, all that stuff. Yeah, it sounds really innocent, but you have to ask yourself, what am I doing in order to secure that? What am I taking part in? And that's something that people don't understand. That's something that I didn't understand when I signed up for the military because I was looking to straighten myself out. But straighten myself out how? And at whose expense? That's the problem.
But you don't think about that when you join. You think you think what you're doing is right. And I'm not justifying anything that people do. It's good to explain how people are duped because A, it exposes how people are duped, and B, it helps people that weren't duped by this understand how people were duped by it. Because when you go in, when I said it's a cure-all, I was being sarcastic because That's it's kind of sold that way. Is your life in the toilet? Economic woes? Join the military. You know what I mean?
But if you play your cards right, it is. It works. But
it can be. But again, at whose expense? Who has to pay or suffer for you to live that more comfortable life because of what you're doing? Joe, I'm going to cut us off because we got a break sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few minutes. This is going to be what I referred to off air as the anti-recruiting segment of the broadcast, at least one of them. Now, what would I mean, Joe, by anti-recruiting?
Well, I mean, it's simple. When like I said last segment, you join the military with the hopes of, maybe bettering yourself. Your first priority isn't securing the country. That's not it. That's not what you do when you sign the dotted line. You're like, by cracky, throw me into the crap. That's where I want to go. No, that's not what you say. What you're saying is, boy, when I get out, what am I going to want to do? Am I going to want to go to school? Do I want to work in electronics? Do I want to be a mechanic? What do I want to do, So you're going through all that stuff with the recruiter. You're not talking about, the sacrifice. Oh, man, that's not what you're saying. And then when you find out what it is you're fighting for and everything else, you get to see what it is you're doing to secure that education, to secure the discipline, to secure the college, yada, yada, right? All I can tell you is now as a vet and with the life experience that I have, my son will not join the military. At least if he wants to, that's going to be his own choice. He'll be 18, he'll be an adult, whatever. However, I will not.
Joe's going to go down like his father did.
For it. Yeah, I'll be like my father is, tells the Marines, hey, look, you let me through, I'm going to punch you in the face. Because I was upstairs, signing on the dotted line. He was trying like hell to stop me. And he actually got there before they wanted to take him away in cuffs. But
why don't you explain how he got there, Joe?
Well, that's it. He just had to use a little force. But he got there.
Joe's father punched out 2 Marines to stop him from joining the Navy, ladies and gentlemen. Okay.
Well, you know what, though?
That's a dedicated father. Bravo.
Let me tell you something. Again, herein lies the issue. You know the truth, because you and I, we've both been there, Popeye. So it's hard to... Anybody knows that teenagers, they don't exactly think that mom and dad know it all. Of course not. We don't even think we know it all, but we do have certain life experience that we wish our children to avoid, if at all possible. And I never thought my father to be that kind of guy as far as being as active against me joining. You know what I mean? But I understand now. During the Vietnam War, he didn't sign. Like all his friends signed up. Instead of get drafted, they signed up because the deal was if you sign up voluntarily, you sign up for 4 years, but you get to sign up in the service of your choice and you get like more control over where you're going to go. And he was like, oh, hell no, screw that. I'll take my chances, and you'd get 2 years. You'd be a ground pounder over in Nam if you got drafted. And and his number never came up, thank goodness. But, a lot of it, all his friends went off to war, all of them. But we never talked about it, especially as a kid growing up or anything. I had no interest in the military. As a matter of fact, what was that? You know what movie it was that I watched a week before to try and get an idea of what boot camp would be like?
Let me guess, Full Metal Jacket.
No, not Full Metal Jacket. See, that's what I would have. See, today, that's what I'd be like. Oh, Full Metal Jacket? No.
That's what I watched.
Renaissance Man.
What?
Exactly. That's how much military exposure that I had in my childhood.
Wow. How much of a culture shock was that when you got
Oh, dude. I mean, you want to talk about crazy. So we get off the bus. And I mean, they're like, in the line, right? So we get in the line, and here's the first thing about boot camp, right? You can tell if you have anybody that's joining the military. First of all, and they say it's gotten easier. I don't think so. I mean, corporal punishment may not be as bad.
Well, boot camp is kind of, dude.
boot camp sucks no matter how you slice.
No, boot camp blows. It's mind control through and through, especially
Right.
when you go and you know, we can get into this later with the Abu Ghraib thing, but when I saw the quote unquote torture positions that they were saying was the torture, when in fact the real torture was, you know, the things they were doing were worse. But what they were showing as torture, the media, was stress positions that they put you through in boot camp. So I was like, that's torture. And then, you know, later on when I researched MK Ultra and mind control, I was like, oh my God, boot camp, trauma-based mind control.
But what they do first and foremost, before all that, they sleep deprive you, because that's the easiest way.
All part of it.
Oh yeah, because it's all part of control. So
Dude, I cracked my head getting off the bus. Okay,
the first 72 hours, we got 3 hours of sleep.
Dude, I cracked my skull getting off the bus. You know, they make a good bag.
Crack your melon.
Yeah, they come on the bus. Eyes in the boat. They start screaming at you. Get up, get off, get off, get off. They're in your face, right? So we run off the bus. Everybody's going into the compartments to get their bags, and I reach in. And when I reached in, I thought I cleared the door, and I didn't. And I caught the lock right on like the top half of my head. And dude, I cut my head wide open. I'm standing there. You know, they got the little footprints that you stand on. I'm standing there and I got blood running down the back of my head, and I got a drill instructor yelling at my face like, do you understand me at all? And I'm like, my head's ringing. I got stars going off. I'm doing everything I can to stay upright. Because I really zonked my noodle, dude. And I'm standing there and I'm trying to stay like on my 2 feet. And I'm like, don't fall over. Don't fall over. Man, like the next day when that chick was shaving our heads, because I wasn't one of the guys that was, oh, I'll be cool. I'll shave my head before I go to boot camp. That's a big no-no. They don't like that. Anyway, they were shaving my head. The chick that was shaving my head caught because it had just started to like close up. She caught it and it opened it right back up. I still have a scar on the top of my head from it.
Yes, is that why you never shave your head?
Right.
Because you got a permanent dent to remind you of that wonderful day when you embarked upon.
I knew it was going to suck, dude. The first 5 seconds I was there, I'd already cut my head.
Oh yeah, no. We didn't have the footprints. We had just a yellow line you had to stand up at, and of course they do it in a place where like all these pay phones were on the wall and everything like that. So, you know, it's kind of like that last. Oh man, you know, I really wish I could call mom and dad right now and say you were so right. You were so right. Yeah, but no, that's not how it went. So that's what they do. And then, you know, you go through this whole in-doc and processing, and good grief, man, the first 72 hours, you're lucky if you get 3 hours of sleep.
And then they're sticking you with all the vaccines.
Oh, yeah, you go through you could just walk down this aisle, and they have people with those pneumatic vaccine dispensers just, you know, and then by the time you're out, you're just like, oh! But I don't know. I never had a...
And then everybody gets sick.
Yeah, of course.
They're like, oh, it's just because there's people from all over the country breathing different air. And
right
so
on.
There's bacteria from different parts of the country. And I'm like, okay, I can understand that in certain areas you're exposed to things that maybe in another area you're not. But how does every company get sick? How does it... it wouldn't be all the crap they're shooting into us the first 3 days that you're there, right?
Well, and then you know what their answer to that is? If you ever go to sick call, see what we would do is say, oh, we don't feel so good. We go to sick call and they give you a cold pack. And the cold pack had...
It's like 2 throat lozenges and
throat lozenges and a box of Sudafed. That's what they gave us. So what we would do is we would save the Sudafed up because we'd take like 24 of them before we'd had PT or anything like that. And we'd be like, you know, running. Almost like that's how we got to like do the extra stuff. Was that? But that's what we used it for, yeah.
Opposite reaction with me, dude. I couldn't have taken that before PT because I would have been like, Oh
yeah, if you take enough of it though, it has like this speed effect. And you're just like, yeah, give me more, bro. Because it would like put you in that freaking mindset. And in some cases, you almost felt like you had to be that way just to I don't know. That's all part of the conditioning, you know, is to be that way, that overly aggressive, dehumanized thug. I mean, that's what they're making you into.
Well, they told us it was like the day before we graduated, so it was like our last full day, and we were sitting there. You know, the drill instructor sat us down, and it was the first time they started treating us like human beings. in 8 weeks. For out of the, you know, eight, actually it was like 8.5 weeks that you're there with in-dock weekend. So out of like the 8.5 weeks that you're there, it was the first time ever they were starting to treat us like normal human beings, you know, like shipmates. That, you know, and they said to us, they were like, we'll give you like a 20-minute period where you can ask some questions, and if we feel like answering, we will. If not, you know, pretty much, you know, F-O and D. So I was like, okay, cool. You know, why do you guys I mean, I kind of have an idea, but I want to know. I'm inquisitive. Why do you guys do, like, how do you guys turn that on and off? Like, does that bother you that you treat people like that? And they're like, no, it's our job. We have to break you. And I was like, so it's, and then he got into it, and, you know, I got him to speak a little bit about it, and he said they're taught that it's their job to break, literally, they called it beating the civilian out of you. That's what they call it. That's what they told us. And once they get that civilian out of you, because they don't want you under a combat situation or in a stressful situation, whatever, you know, to second guess orders. They want you to get an order from a higher up and do what you're told, and not go, there's a morality issue with that. No, just do what I told you, damn it. That's what they want. They don't want you to think. They need you to react. They need you to rely on your training. Now, in certain situations, your training does save your ass. Firefights, things like that, IED attacks.
Right on.
Just that,
and the same concepts are now being applied to your civilian police forces.
Oh, big time. Very good point. We can get into that in the next hour. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. Hour number 1 of the 6-hour Veterans Day Marathon is up, but relax, we have another 5 hours to go. Coming up, we're going to have Johnny English joining me and Joe, so don't go anywhere.
5 hours. I better grab a box of Sudafed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on today's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole, and hour number 2 of the 6-hour Veterans Day special broadcast here at the Orion Talk Radio Network. It's going to be spanning my show, Joe's show, and Ken's show. So make sure you stay tuned in. Ken and Ryan are going to be coming on later. It's going to be really awesome radio. You're going to hear truth. Now, joining me for hour number 2, his fellow radio show host, and he's actually he did his debut broadcast here at Orion last night. Very well done, so I may add. He's an Army veteran and a good friend of mine, Mr. Johnny English.
Hi, how's it going, man?
Johnny, first off, I want to say congrats on your show here in Orion, buddy.
Oh, well, thanks, man. And I really enjoyed it. It was, you know, we had a few issues, little things that I've got to work out, and, you know, with timing and things like that. I'm not used to commercials, so... I think you did really good for your first broadcast, you know, coming from doing everything yourself to having, you know, a lot of things automated and, you know, other stuff being done on the back end that you kind of, you know what I mean? You did real good, dude. So kudos to you. I appreciate that, man. I really do. And I appreciate all you guys getting together and calling, giving me a nice congratulations and all that after the show. We had our own show after the show. Yeah, we should have recorded that. We could have. Yeah. Special edition.
The special after hours show. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what I should have popped it up. I thought about it, and I don't know. I just totally lost it. So, yeah, that would have been a good one. I agree. So when Joe and I were going in the end of hour 1 there, we were doing what I called the anti-recruiting segment. And I'd like to continue on with that for a little bit here. We were I mean, at the end, we were kind of a little jokey themed because we were reminiscing about boot camp stories. But the overall idea, I guess, basically is to try to instill it into the children of the future that you should not join the military. Now, I don't have any sons or daughters myself, but I have a niece and I have nephews, 3 of them. And the oldest one, a couple years ago, he was, you know, in this Marine phase where he wanted to be a Marine and he would wear the fatigues and stuff. And I said to my brother, don't let him join the military. And my father was like, why not? And I was like, Dad, you ought to know better. You're a vet yourself. And he's like, well, if he wants to defend his country. And I was like, you're not defending anything. You're going to battle for the UN. And he goes, well, that is a good point. And I was like, yeah, it ain't like it used to be when you served. You know, my father served in the late 50s, early 60s. So it was much, I mean, things were going on back then, but it wasn't like it is now. It wasn't anywhere close to where we are now. And I'm pleased that my nephew is actually smart enough, and he's like, I don't want to join the military now. So, I said to him, if you ever get the urge to, let me know, and I'll talk you out of it. Because I don't want to see any of those boys go to die.
Well, let me ask you guys, when were you recruited?
When was I recruited? Back in
when were you guys
2001.
No, but I mean, what, were you in high school? What?
Oh, no, I was already out, but I grew up wanting to go in the military. I tried joining back once during the Clinton administration, but that's when they were downsizing, and they were trying to find every reason for people to not come in.
Well, I was... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, mine was in 94. And, yeah, I mean, they came into the high schools, but I never thought anything of it. It was only after I kind of flunked out of college. I'm like, okay, what are my options? You know, and that's why I joined the military. But their recruiting effort didn't work for me. As a matter of fact, it was kind of like a last, that was it for, you know, if this doesn't work, I don't know what the hell's going to work. That's how it was for me.
I was actually recruited my junior year. They came in, they gave us the ASVAB test, and my entire class took it. And there was like just about 3 or 4 of us. They were like right at the top of the class. So we had basically every, you know, service calling just relentlessly. I had the Navy wanting me to go into their nuclear sub program. And then I found out that only less than 2% of all the class, you know, of all the people that go into the program actually finish it and actually make it. And, you know, then I had, of course, the Air Force trying to all different types of things. And then the Army came through. So I actually signed up the summer, the summer before my senior year. I was already signed up.
That's crazy.
You see, I went...
That's early. That's young. I mean...
But see, you got to think about it. See, and
how old were you when you went in, though? Were you 18?
No, I was 17.
You see, I did the same thing originally. I wanted to go in... It was like delayed entry. I was going to join when I was 17, and then they would... whatever the hell it was called. It was something where they were going to let me in when I was 17. And I went through MEPS, and I don't even remember what it was. But it's something they were like, oh, you have to wait another year or two. And at that point, it was a decision of join. And I was joining the Army then. I said it was either the Army or I was going to be a volunteer firefighter, because either one I had to go through a ton of training for. So I had to go to the fire academy for a couple months. So I didn't want to invest that time and money and energy and all this other stuff and then get on the department and work my way up, only to be turn around and join the military and run away in a year. It would be a waste of time. So I wanted to stick to something. So when they said the Army was my first choice, and when it was during the Clinton administration when they were shutting bases down and everything, and they were turning away everybody and their mother because they were throwing people out of the military. They didn't want to bring more in. So they were turning away everybody in droves. So I said, okay, well, I'm not going to come back in a year. I didn't want to wait a year. So I said, F you, and I went the route of being a firefighter for 6 years. So... And then as soon as like a year later was up, dude, I had the recruiters at my door, knocking, literally at my front door. Can we come in? We'd like to sit down and talk to you. I'm like, no, I'm done. You guys pissed me off. And then for years, I was angry at them. And then in my mid-20s is when I would reach that point you were at, Joe. Oh shit, what do I do with my life?
Right on.
I was turning 25, and I said, I haven't done any, in my eyes, I haven't done enough to help out. And this was before 9/11. This was before 9/11 had happened. I signed my contract after 9/11, but I had already been talking to the recruiter beforehand. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? You know what I mean? What am I going to do? Am I going to be part of something bigger than myself? You know what I mean? And that's when you start to, that's when you're ripe for the picking, I think, too. When you're fresh out of high school, like you were, Johnny, and then when they look for guys too in their early to mid 20s that are, in that phase of their life, I need to be part of something bigger, and they're like, here's a plate of propaganda.
It's what's really interesting about the whole recruiting process is that they focus on the young and the naive, the ones that don't. But more specifically, think about this. A lot of these kids that go into the military, especially these days, if you look at the demographic, how many kids these days grow up in a broken home, that don't have those parental figures. And, so they may think, wow, they may be equating that recruiter to a father figure or something like that, and and these recruiters know that they're taught this, that's an angle that they exploit. But what's even more interesting is the numbers. I mean, recruiting, that is not a easy task. They have quotas, much like police do for speeding tickets. They have to get X amount of people in, or it goes negatively against their career in their evaluations. So
that's why they hit our town. Our town was a really small town in Alabama, and I mean really small. The only thing you had to do in that town is work in a trailer plant, making house trailers. There were 5 trailer plants in a town. Literally, I believe 2,000 was our population. My graduating class was 56. So it was a really tiny town, and they knew those were good places to come into. Just simply for the reason that these kids have nothing else to do. If they're not going to college, which most of them couldn't go to college, their parents couldn't afford to send them to college, and most of them just weren't big enough to earn athletic scholarships. There was a couple that did, through girls basketball and things like that. But we were ripe for the picking.
Oh yeah, dude. That's what they aim for. I'm going to cut us off because we got a break sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in a few minutes. You got 3 minutes. Go get a cup of coffee and return. So going into break, Johnny was making a really good point that, in a town like the town he grew up in, would you say 50-something, 56 people graduated in your class?
That was my graduating class, 56.
Okay, so with a graduating class that small, I can guarantee you it's ripe for the picking for the military. And they, believe it or not, they look for that kind of stuff. And then to reach out to those kids beforehand to get them prepped for military life, I want to join the military. They have things like Call of Duty.
But you notice, but notice too, also the demographic of those that live in small towns. Look at the presidential election that just took place, and you can see that it's the red-blooded Americans. The typical patriotic American populace that actually appeal to the that voted for Romney. If you look at that, 80% of the land area of the United States was red. It was only the population centers that were blue, that were your more social or left-leaning people, right? So when these recruiters, they go out, they look for these small towns because they're typically more patriotic. And they play to that big time because chances are these kids were brought up by they either had a veteran parent or their parents are patriotic people that pay attention. Typically, you've got a mom and a dad in that family, and that's what you get. So they go after that demographic. Whereas in the inner cities, the focus shifts because it's not a patriotic push they're doing. Now they're talking about incentivizing.
Well, yeah, so it's how you market it. Because when I was in boot camp, that's a good point. When you bring that up, it makes me think of when I was in boot camp, there were guys that were, they got $20,000 bonuses to sign up. And they're like, what'd you get for a bonus? And I'm like, I didn't get jack.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, I voluntarily signed up. You got a bonus? And they're like, yeah, man. And when I think about it, the guys that said that, most of them were from inner cities. They weren't from I wasn't from super rich white bread America. That was the other side of town. I lived in what they considered the other side of the tracks. But I noticed that you're right, the inner city kids, they targeted with bonuses, monetary bonuses and things like that. Right on. As opposed to other areas where the people are more patriotic. And
right, because what do they care?
They targeted my area with it's your patriotic duty to defend your country, blah, blah, blah. And that's the way we got, my area. That's the way they sucked in the people from my area was the patriot stuff. So that's a good point. And I didn't even think of that until you said that.
I mean, that's just the way it is. You have to. You're selling something, really. I mean, as a recruiter, you're there to sell that particular branch of service, and patriotism doesn't talk or speak to somebody in the inner city because they don't feel patriotic. Well, because you have to remember, well, what has the government done for me? Because that's what they look at. It's a different mentality. They're not self-starters. They don't believe in personal responsibility, or at least a lot of the lower income in inner cities don't. It's just that's not the way it is. You're talking now for 3 generations or more, about the last 3, you've seen a real big push away from personal responsibility and onto social welfare. So, a lot of that, you have to market it towards the person that you're trying
you're right. In each area, it's a different demographic. And recruiters are scumbags. In fact, we had a cadence in boot camp that went something like this. Shipmate, don't be blue. My recruiter screwed me too. Okay? And then there was a few other choice things that went into. But that's the how it started off. And it was everybody, as soon as you got in, you realized, wow, they lied their asses off. I was a little more prepared. My father was in the military, so he sat me down, and he went in during time that they still used to beat the living crap out of people during boot camp, and bloody people up physically. So he sat me down and prepared me for what was about to happen. You know what I mean? But there were people, Joe, that had no clue. One guy went nuts. He went AWOL, and they found him hiding in a porta-john downtown at a construction site. And he was like, I'm not going back. Well, they discharged him.
Yeah, we don't want to, no problem. That's another thing, too. I forget what they called it in the in the Navy when you were in boot camp. There was a company. There was a special company that was set up for those that were being processed out because of all that. But it really wasn't all that hard. If you put up a big enough stink about wanting to get out, they just gave you your paper. See you later. So that was another misconception, was that just because you signed on the dotted line there was still a time period in boot camp where you had that option. When
I went through, there was no option. We had a guy that wanted to quit, and they tortured him for like 3 days, pretty much emotionally. They didn't let him sleep. And at the time, you're just like, wow, they're being hard on the guy. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, is you got to have the mental fortitude to be able to get through that. And then once you do, it's like...
Oh, dude, boot camp, there are grown men crying.
Yeah, oh, yeah, sure.
It pushes you to your limits, without a doubt. It will... when I got out, I was like, everybody should be forced to go. Like, I was quoted, 10 years ago when I got out of boot camp saying, we should all be like Israel. I'll have to serve a certain amount of time in the military. I think it makes you a better person. Blah, 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 blah.
You had the jelly donut in your Foot Locker, didn't you?
No, but we had guys that did. I can tell you that.
I had a guy we had 8-man rooms. I was pretty lucky in boot camp, and we had 8-man rooms. There was a guy in my room that was almost identical to that guy. Literally, he looked like him. He was built like him. He's kind of a chubby guy. And he was the guy that always got his sock drawer, his underwear drawer. Basically, his entire closet was just ripped out and thrown on the floor because he was just a screw up. He just didn't know how to do it. He was just kind of dumb, I guess. He was a nice guy, great guy, but man.
Dude, we had one guy that would repeatedly get the entire company beaten on a daily basis because this guy was like a class A F-up. But and you look at these people and you're like, how did the recruiter get you in? Like, how did you... Yeah, they're just looking for numbers at some point with some of the people that... I'm not bashing people, but anybody that's ever been in the military knows what I'm talking about. In boot camp, you meet some interesting people. That's all I'll say.
Hey, the other thing is depending on the branch of service, you want to really keep an eye on, if you do, right, at the end of the day, if you do decide that you're going to join the military after everything that we've told you tonight, then just please pay attention to the time of year that you're signing up to go to boot camp for. Because there's certain areas or certain branches of service that train or have boot camp in certain parts of the country where it might not be advantageous to say go in January like I did in Great Lakes, Illinois. That sucked, especially when you're standing out. Yeah, you're standing out waiting in the chow line, and of course they've got freaking 30 companies ahead of you to sit down, and it's 20 below zero, and you're out there for 45 minutes shivering your giblets off. Yeah.
You don't want to go to Fort Jackson, South Carolina during the summer either.
No.
Let me tell you. It was Cat 4 literally every day we were in boot camp except for I think we had about 7 days. Out of the entire, and not 7 days in a row. It was awful. It was just brutally hot, and fire ants. We were getting eaten alive by ants, and you better not jump up. You're down doing push-ups. You got fire ants crawling up your arms and biting the crap out of you. You didn't just jump up and say, "Hey, I'm hurting."
Ouch. Ouch, ouch, Mr. Drill Instructor, ouch. I'm getting bitten. A drill instructor would be like, snort the ant. What? They'd make you do some retarded thing. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm hurting. There's an ant biting me. Mr. Drill Instructor, it hurts." Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Don't go anywhere. Kids, don't join the military. Educate yourselves. Be a volunteer firefighter or something. Don't join the friggin' military, please. That's right, kiddies. I said going into break that I do not want you to join the military. You're free to make up your own minds. But if you ask me for my personal thoughts on it, don't do it. It's not the same thing as it used to be. Sorry if that pisses people off, especially on Veterans Day, but it's just the way it is. It's just one veteran's point of view. It doesn't mean that, you have to listen to it or not, but it is what it is. And I don't want to see any more kids die. I'm tired of seeing these 20-year-old Marines coming back from Afghanistan and, soldiers as well, missing arms, legs, or in a box, dead. I'm getting tired of it. I'm tired of seeing corpsmen blow up. I'm tired of all of it. I'm tired of seeing airmen getting killed, sailors getting killed. I'm over it, okay? It's getting old real fast. And I'm tired of seeing these kids being fed into a meat grinder that I know is not even to do it. How are you defending freedom? How are you defending freedom? Going into foreign countries and shooting people that are poor. They don't have anything. They're representative of the middle class in this country and the lower class, and I guess the poor in this country. I don't want to say lower class because that sounds horrible. So the middle class to poor in this country. That's who's represented by the people that we go invade and shoot and kill. I don't know, it just pisses me off. It really pisses me off. I'm tired of seeing these young kids getting killed. I mean, all kidding aside and everything, do not join the military. It's as simple as that. I couldn't say it anymore. I'm like the anti-recruiter. I really am. Do not join the military. It is not what you think it is. And I'm going to get email from this. I know, because I always do when I say this. Some of it's good. Sometimes I get, as a veteran, I'm surprised you would say that, Popeye. No, as a veteran, I'm surprised you would email me and bitch me out for telling kids to not go, sacrifice themselves for nothing. It's my responsibility as a veteran who's been through this to at least share my experience and say, hey, wait a minute, stop. What do you two think, Joe?
I wouldn't. I don't. You know me. I don't advocate or recommend anybody join the military now, based knowing on what I know now. If things were done right, I could see it. But we haven't declared war in this country since World War II. Legally, and if you take a look at how this country's got into war, even World War I, people don't realize it, but we were kind of pushed into war by these elitists. One of them that really capitalized on it, Samuel Bush, father of Prescott, grandfather of George H.W., and great-grandfather of George W. He being on the War Industries Board, colluded with Remington, the Remington family, and had a real good lobbying effort to make the United States enter World War I. And as a result, they both profited handsomely from it. So when you realize what it is you're going to war for, and I say war in quotations because, again, the last legal war, World War II, you tend to not... there is no incentive, no GI Bill, no Navy College Fund or Army College Fund or whatever out there that can incentivize it enough for me to want to compromise my values and my virtues and sign on the dotted line. I can't do it. And that's the way I tell people. Now what you guys do or what you do, that's your own choice. But like I said, I tend not to like people see, or I tend to like to see people learn the hard way about things. Because there's a lot of damage that can be done to people as a result.
Well, see, that's why I fight as hard as I do about this stuff, and I get PO'd about this, and I guess, you know, I have a whatever. I get angry, I guess you could call it, because I understand how dangerous it could be, and it's not like I'm being a cranky old guy going, oh, you know, blah 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 blah. Look, if the person could get through it and learn with minimal harm to themselves, right? You know, and get out of there healthy, and or you know, I mean, without getting sent to, even if they got sent to combat, that aside, I mean, like the vaccines and all the other crap. If I could assure the person I was talking to that they wouldn't be exposed to any of that stuff, and maybe my attitude would be a little different, but I know what these kids are going to go through. And I can't advocate that, yeah, go through it. They'll take care of you when you get out. Trust me. No, they won't.
I kind of went in, you know, as I was saying before, you know, they prey on small towns, and I was one of those victims, I guess you could say. I mean, I volunteered, you know, I signed the dotted line and said my little speech and raised my right hand and all that stuff. But I joined to get out of that town, and that was the wrong reason. There's a lot of people that joined for the right reasons. They really believe in their heart that they're going to defend this country against you know, enemies abroad, if you want to say it like that. And that's really the sad part is all the people that have died, all these soldiers that have died in one of the most ridiculous wars. I can't even think of anything more ridiculous. You know, 58,000 died in Vietnam over nothing, over something, over the Gulf of Tonkin, which never even happened. And now we've got, you know, who knows how many more are going to die in Afghanistan and Iraq, or even if we end up going into Iran. I mean, I can't recommend it either. I mean, I really can't. When I went in, I was probably one of the last. That was probably the late 80s was probably the last time you could really go in and expect to, quote unquote, make a career out of it and get your college fund and, you know, all that stuff. After that, I got out just before Gulf War I. So after that, you're pretty much screwed. So no, I can't suggest it. I don't know. I used to be like you, Popeye. I was all for it. Well, you know, everybody should have to go in and serve a couple years, and you know, it'll make you grow up. It'll help you see some things, maybe straighten you out a little bit. But I don't even believe that now. I really don't. I can't. In good faith, I cannot do that.
Nope. That's I can't either. That's why I won't advocate for people to join the military anymore. And I've done a complete 180 because you're going to get sent to go fight and die and kill for lies.
Right on, but I can't, you know, I can't blame people for doing it if they feel like it's a good choice for them.
Oh no, I don't.
If that's what they want to do, then fine.
But see, I don't. You know why I don't blame when people are like, "How could you?" Because I get, as much as I say don't join, you know, I'll get messages or emails and stuff saying, or comments on videos saying, you know, how you're trying to justify, you know, for these people. No. I understand how you could get duped into this. I mean, look at the levels of propaganda that are put out there now. Since 9/11, it's cool and patriotic if you're a guy to be in the military. And if you're a dude and you don't join the military, what are you, some sort of pussy? I mean, that's the mentality that's out there now. That's what's being, you know, put out into the public. And then the economy sucks, right? Places are closing, jobs are being, you know, closed or shut down, you know, terminated, whatever you want to call it. People are going, well, what am I going to do? Well, there's one thing that's recession-proof: the military, because people are like, well, we're always at war.
Used to be recession-proof. It's not anymore. Here's the latest with the military. You know, it used to be that during recessions, that's where people would go as a safe haven to be able to provide for their families. You know, you'd go and you'd serve in the military. Well, now the military's scaling back. So much so that you have people that have been in for 12, 13, 14 years. Now that the military's just saying, we got too many of this certain rate, you got to go. Case in point, right here in in Hampton Roads, Virginia, the Navy has been doing that a lot. You know, you've got E6s, E5s in with 10, 12 years that are given their walking papers. Right now, just, hey, guess what? Got to go. These are people that thought, hey, you know what? I'm going to make it a career. I'm going to do this for 20 years, get a little retirement. Now they have absolutely nothing. They're getting thrown out on their tookuses because the rates are overloaded and they're scaling back. So now more than ever, it's a different environment. Now they're making it extremely competitive, and they're even scaling back recruiting requirements. And unless you score higher on ASVAB tests and are able to be something other than, say, like a deck monkey or cannon fodder, then you're screwed. It's a little different in a situation these days, buddy.
No, I agree. But that's what they put it out there that, hey, that's the only thing that's recession-proof is the military. And then, like you said, people join and they get screwed royally. All right, we're going to break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment of today's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. But we still have 4 more hours of this Veterans Day special broadcast here on Ryan Talk Radio. So don't tune out. Joe's show, part of the broadcast. Ken's show, part of the broadcast. So until 11 p.m., Eastern Standard Time tonight, you're going to be hearing the Veterans Day special. All right. Johnny and Joe are going to hang out and chill because I want to play an audio clip. And Johnny's right? And Johnny's been gracious enough to hang out into at least the first segment of Joe's broadcast tonight. So thank you, Johnny.
Very good.
And
just so people know, let me give a little thing about tonight on the Freedom Links Conspiracy Chronicles. As we continue our Veterans Day extravaganza, we'll be taking a historical journey, and I'm going to be focusing on veterans that have made a difference in history. So that's going to be the topic tonight on hour 3 and 4 of our Veterans extravaganza.
Awesome.
Right.
Well, I'm going to play the audio from this clip, boys, and I think, Joe, you've heard it, but Johnny, you might have heard it. I'm not sure. If you haven't, this will blow your mind. And ladies and gentlemen,
not the Lumberjack song again, is it?
No. This was a message that was hidden from the eyes of the public. It was put out there. I guess the people that put it out there half expected the American general public to see it because it went up on the internet, but it wasn't. It came out from a group that called themselves the Mujahideen Army Political Committee, and it came out March 17th, 2005, during the Iraq War. And the audio I have from it, I've titled it, Just Who Were We Fighting in Iraq? Check this out and listen to what this guy says. It's just, I find it very interesting. Who were we fighting in Iraq? Who really were we fighting in Iraq? Do you think it was Al-Qaeda? Let's see.
People of America, we wish to share with you our thoughts on the events we experienced, as well as what the future may bear. And despite the madness we have endured and still, we see no harm in presenting you with the criminal nature of your newly re-elected emperor. Despite our belief that the elections were flawed, we know now that when there is a close tie between the candidates, there is something wrong. Some in our ranks believe that any candidate from any side of the spectrum are two faces of the same coin. You, the people, have said your word in what is claimed to be a democracy, and thus have chosen a leader who claims to represent your vision. It is your right to lead the world, as it is the right of any nation which chooses to do so. Yet this does not allow you to conquer others. There is a belief of a large number of our people that a lot of the facts do not reach you, facts that may be classified as unsuitable for the general public, facts that are twisted to gain a positive image here or there. Nothing new to an emperor who represents deception, lies, crimes, half-victories, and total defeats. Your administration, time after time, lied and presented you with achievements directed by Hollywood and performed in Iraq. You have elected these criminals, and thus you are responsible for their actions. We hope that your future decisions will be based on reason and belief, for your emperor tomorrow will mirror the image of America to the world, and by his actions will your empire be measured. And for the first time in history, a mafia of the weapons plants represented by Bush, oil companies represented by Dick Cheney, and the Zionists represented by Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Pearl hijack the United States of America in an ingenious plan to control the world. This type of administration is exactly what Benjamin Franklin once warned of. By weakness and ignorance, you have allowed this gang of criminals to hijack your country, create a new phobia to recruit those whom they regard as nothing but fuel and vehicles to their master plan. This administration will enforce on you, just as it tries to enforce on our people, new laws that will result in a police state similar to those of your consecutive governments back in our region. Legislation will soon be drafted by the appointed puppets to allow foreign ownership of land and structure, and soon our people will be the foreigners on the land of their forefathers. This new world order will enslave people of all religions and race, and soon your children, as well as ours, if they survive, will truly live in a planet of apes. And with a reduced population for ease of control, this can only be the implementation of a plan once presented by Henry Kissinger. This world has not yet seen an empire which constitutes in its prime objectives the destruction and genocide of whole populations and societies, only to control the energy resources of this planet. Your representatives and their media have portrayed an image that an insurgency is in effect, and that it is led by elements of foreign fighters entering from Syria and neighboring countries. Yet we assure you, this is only a continuation of what Bush once claimed, mission accomplished. This resistance movement was prepared for, and is only the second chapter of this war, and we are mostly, if not all Iraqis, proud Iraqis, who kept their oaths to defend people and country. And because this war may last longer than what the invaders anticipated, we have all promised to make their stay long, costly, and painful. Blaming other countries is nothing but creating new pretexts to invade other sovereign states and back future expeditions. They have made our country a battlefield to settle accounts with elements of Al-Qaeda, formerly dear allies and partners. They have also created new phobias to justify their continued presence, despite their loss of this war. And for the general media, we call on them to think about what they declare and not fear death and imprisonment. Do not fall into the traps prepared by those who pull the strings from Tel Aviv. As for the declared casualties, this is an epic on its own. We assure you that the figures are far higher than they declare. It is not a secret today in Iraq what we call the green card soldiers. Young men from South America and other parts of the world gathered and promised the U.S. citizenship and large sums of cash for their mercenary services in Iraq. They are always on the front lines, and their casualty figures are never declared. They are hidden in unmarked graves and dumped into rivers under the cover of moonless nights, some of which the resistance have provided evidence of. There are also a large number of security contractors who are not listed as military personnel. To us, it is one thing to be tricked into this war, but it is totally different to come here and fight someone else's war. After the failed American elections in Iraq, they will now play the sectarian card. They are already sending their mercenaries to destroy churches and mosques alike in order to prepare the ground for civil war. They will train more and more local traitors to conduct police operations and detention raids on anyone who does not accept democracy performed at the muzzle of a barrel. The local mercenaries will also act as sandbags to their masters when we choose to strike. The non-conduct of your troops has also taken its toll on our people. It has created resentment and disgust. They dismiss these war crimes as isolated cases, yet the figures are always on the rise. What's more, our scandals of Abu Ghraib, Boca, and the use of chemical weapons on Fallujah, and only God knows what's to come. Life under dictatorship is far more safer than behind the bars of your democracy. Have you not asked yourselves, where are the weapons of mass destruction? And where are the links between our previous government and the once CIA-sponsored Al-Qaeda? Or is that all now a thing of the past? What happened to the thousands of people who died and continue to die of cancer? Women who give birth to deformed babies, caused by the effect of your military's depleted uranium shells. Since 1990, thousands on both sides of the conflict have suffered unknown illnesses. Many have died since then, and others lack medical attention. Large parts of Iraq will be radioactive for millions of years to come. And if we were to return this radiating material to the US and Britain, we would be no different. than those who use them. May we ask you, why do you think the British government decided to set foot only in the areas of the South, where the resistance is still partially active? They have left the difficult areas for your boys to suffer. This deal was accepted by your government, only to form a purely cosmetic alliance with a nation that still strives for the glory of its imperial past. They have turned the land of the free into a camp of capitalist slavery, and then changed the home of the brave into a printing house for papers they call dollars, and guarded it with enormous military might. This administration, which claims that you have re-elected, has brought on more humiliation and insults to each and every one of you than any other government in your short yet tremendous history. And as odd as it may seem, we advise you to take matters in your own hands and rid this world of such criminals, or any form of government which resembles the neocons in their aims. Form a third party if need be. Appoint those who resist preemptive war as true representatives of the people before it is too late. And if demonstrations and protests are not heard, use and protect what is left of your constitution and correct matters by force. This world awaits your move. Today these words may seem strange, but we believe that a nation which once gave the world John F. Kennedy, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, Hughes and Henry Ford will not fall short of giving true leaders of substance and dignity. This war has taught us that one man on the field can change the outcome of a day. One man who believes in true freedom can do what nations put together dare think of. We share these thoughts with great honesty to those of you who spent days and nights trying to prevent this war, timeless efforts to prevent this real Holocaust. To all of you we say, thank you for your time.
Wow, what kind of evil terrorists thank the people that tried to prevent the mass genocide in Iraq? Just think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Who the hell were we fighting in Iraq? All right, hour number 2 of the 6-hour Veterans Day broadcast is up. Onward and upward to the Freedom Link radio broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We will be right back.
Welcome, everybody, to hour number 3 of the Veterans Day special here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm Joe Joseph, along with Popeye of FederalJack.com and Down the Rabbit Hole. And we also have Johnny English here joining us for the first segment. And, of course, his new broadcast. What time is your new show on there, Johnny?
It's on Saturday night, 7 to 9 p.m. East.
That's right. You had a great first show last night. We all tuned in, and I'll tell you what, it's good to have another strong talent like that here on Orion Talk Radio, where the numbers just keep going up and up. I'll tell you what, and it's good because when you have people like this working for the truth and for, not sensationalism, because that's not how we roll here. It's all about the real news. So, with that said, last hour, at the end of last hour, Popeye, you played that great clip, and there was a portion of that clip that I keyed in on out of everything that they said. What was the name of that group that put that out?
It was called, they called themselves the it was the political committee of the Mujahideen Army, and that was released March 17th, 2005.
Right on. And oh, by the way, guess what? John King has entered into the fray. So welcome, John. Are you there, John?
Yeah, I'm here. I just got lost.
Oh, okay, good, okay. Well, I'm glad you made it. Anyway, the one thing that I keyed in on Popeye was this. Elected, you elected these officials, and you are responsible for their actions. How many times leading up to this election have we all said the same thing to the listeners? That when you put your name by a line that says Mitt Romney, that says Barack Obama, you are complicit in the crime. You helped put them in there. They represent you, and therefore you share a responsibility with whatever they do. And that's one thing that I can't do, which is why it's so wrong to say, well, it's the lesser of two evils. We got to get that guy out of there. Evil is still evil. So do you want to put your name by the side of, say, George W. Bush because you feel like, well, he's the lesser of two evils than if John Kerry got in or Al Gore, or even this election with, well, Mitt Romney, he's not going to screw up the country as bad? Or do you say, I'm not going to be responsible for what these people are doing and either abstain or vote for a third party? But, that's the thing, guys, I think that we have to overcome. And that was a great point that group put out.
Well, that, like I said, the video, if you've never heard the audio from it, that audio clip is pretty, it's pretty insane. I mean, that was 2005, and it's coming out of Iraq, and here you have them talking about the Federal Reserve and puppet elections and, the empire and wars of aggression and blah, blah, and you're like, what? What? And, then if you research this stuff, you're like, wow, these people know more than most of the people that live here in the country. I know we only got him for a few more minutes. Johnny English, what do you think? What's your take on that audio that you just heard?
I'm honestly a little surprised. It seemed like the guy was more knowledgeable about all of the, he knows more about the shady goings on in this country. He knows more than the average citizen, the average Joe that was born here and grew up here, and as they walk around in their own little world, and they don't seem to care about anything else except for their honey boo boo, and I keep using that as a reference because it's absolutely ridiculous. But it just amazes me. This guy seemed to know more about it than the average citizen. That this guy's talking the same thing that we've been talking for a long time, except he's not one of us, so he must be crazy, just like the crazy conspiracy people. We're all just crazy.
He must be an Iraqi conspiracy theorist.
Oh no, we can't have that.
So what's I find it telling that he said, you guys are going to have laws imposed on you that's going to make a police state, and that was 7 years ago. And look at where we are now.
Well, I mean, you knew that after the Patriot Act was passed, I mean, that was the biggest egregious trampling of our rights in this country, as far as, and that's the thing that, again, people have to understand is you have to give your rights away. They can't take them away. They can't legislate them away, but they can scare you into giving them away, and that's exactly what they've done. They use fear tactics to rule you. And what more powerful and yet flexible enemy? What more powerful and flexible enemy is there than one that's unseen and has no borders? I mean, that right there is enough,
Endless war. Didn't what's his name say that? The Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, didn't he say it could be an endless war or a war with no end?
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a very dangerous game that we've gotten ourselves into. And it's not going to be easy to get out of. As you've seen by the results of this last election, where third-party candidates got 2% of the national vote. So people are still well within, they're still in the matrix, pretty hardcore. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort to do that. But I will say this, there are a lot more people that are irritated and on their way to pissed. Not quite pissed yet, but they're getting there.
I think they figured out, it's easier just to rig the elections than it is to kill a president. Because, the last time that happened, it was it's still going on. People are still questioning things, and people still want to know what really happened on that day and who was really involved. So I think it's a lot easier just to rig the elections with these voting machines and, whatever the reason they use.
No, you're right. You're right. And, what we could do is, information gets around so much quicker now with the internet and everything else. Everything's at people's fingertips, so it's a lot harder to cover these things up. People do look into these events, and a lot of people do get to the bottom of things just through the internet. It's an amazing device. And so tonight we're going to use the internet to go through history. And starting in the next segment, we're going to visit, our first stop is Major General Smedley Butler. So that's going to be a very informative next segment for sure.
War's a racket, Joe.
War is a racket, by cracky. But, hey, Johnny, thanks for coming out and supporting the Veterans Special tonight. It's great having you here tonight and great having you on the network, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me, you and Popeye both on your show. And
plug your show.
Broken Man Radio, Saturday nights, 7 to 9 p.m. East, right here on OrionTalkRadio.com.
Fantastic. So, and of course, we've got John King. Don't forget, at the start of hour number 2 is the legendary King's Court, as John offers his insights as no one else can put it. And don't forget, stay tuned after the Freedom Links Conspiracy Chronicles as the Veterans Day special continues into the Information Nation. So all the way to 11 p.m. Eastern, we'll be here with you. So don't go away, folks. So much more to talk about. This is the Veterans Day special on the Orion Talk Radio Network. We'll be right back.
You can roughly locate any community somewhere along a scale running all the way from democracy to despotism. This man makes it his job to study these things.
Well, for one thing, avoid the comfortable idea that the mere form of government can of itself safeguard a nation against despotism.
For big business, despotism was often a useful tool for securing foreign markets and pursuing profits. One of the U.S. Marine Corps' most highly decorated generals, Smedley Darlington Butler, by his own account, helped pacify Mexico for American oil companies, Haiti and Cuba for National City Bank, Nicaragua for the Brown Brothers Brokerage, the Dominican Republic for sugar interests, Honduras for U.S. fruit companies, and China for Standard Oil. General Butler's services were also in demand in the United States itself in the 1930s, as President Franklin Delano Roosevelt sought to relieve the misery of the Depression through public enterprise and tougher regulations on corporate exploitation and misdeeds.
More power to you, President Roosevelt. The entire country's behind you, thrilled with hope and patriotism.
But the country was not entirely behind the populist president. Large parts of the corporate elite despised what Roosevelt's New Deal stood for. And so, in 1934, a group of conspirators sought to involve General Butler in a treasonous plan.
The plan as outlined to me was to form an organization of veterans, to use as a bluff or as a club at least, to intimidate the government.
But the corporate cabal had picked the wrong man. Butler was fed up with being what he called a gangster for capitalism.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities, which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The upshot of the whole thing was that I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government.
A congressional committee ultimately found evidence of a plot to overthrow Roosevelt. According to Butler, the conspiracy included representatives of some of America's top corporations, including J.P. Morgan, DuPont, and Goodyear Tire.
And so here you have, in history, in our recorded history, just 3 generations ago, you had a plot to overthrow the United States government. And it was a veteran, Major General Smedley Butler, most decorated Marine in the Marine Corps history, that blew the whistle on the whole thing. See, they had him pegged as somebody that was PO'd because he got passed over for commandant of the Marine Corps, and as a result, you have some serious backfire, I guess you could say, of the plan. So he goes and he testifies before the McCormick Dickstein Committee, and folks, you can go and look up the minutes of the McCormick Dickstein Committee to see the outcome of it. But they did find that there was a plan and a plot, and they identified companies and corporations that were trying to make this happen. But guess what happens? Before the McCormick Dickstein Committee, much like any committee that goes and looks into anything like this, it was defunded. The funding was cut off, and it had to stop. So it's interesting how that stuff happens, isn't it, guys?
You know, you played an audio clip. I think it was from a Civil War soldier once.
That's right. Yeah, that
found
was
this stuff.
Julius Howell.
Yeah, dude, that was powerful too. Like hearing that from this Civil War veteran. I mean, I would consider the Civil War probably the worst war in our history when it comes to mass casualties, bloody, horrible, brutal warfare. And you know, that was the first war that the Gatling gun that was introduced to the battlefield. So you can only we were talking about this with Tim one night off air. Can you imagine the fear those first guys must have been, because they were still kind of marching up in lines at the time. They were just getting out of that whole older school way of fighting, and they were marching up on battlefields, and all of a sudden or even probably slower, but even it was still like a machine gun to them, right? Yeah, but can you imagine the fear those guys must have felt, the first couple guys that watched their friends get obliterated by some new, type of weapon? So the Civil War was just probably the worst war in my opinion, and you had this incredible audio clip from it, dude. Just that was powerful to hear him say, like, you shouldn't be, wars are crap. They should. Yeah,
it was. And what's even worse is, but see, what are you always taught the Civil War was fought over? Slavery. It was all about slavery. And it had nothing to do with slavery. As a matter of fact, he goes on to tell you that, by his generation, by the time that his generation were children and everything else, slavery was already on its way out. Now, his family had slaves. He was brought up with the slaves. And they were, because of the fact that they were brought up that way, you befriended them. And the next thing you know, slavery is on its way out also, because these people were raised with the slaves. Now you don't view them as slaves, you view them as your peers. And that's the way that, he said that slavery was dead. So that wasn't really the issue. The issue was states' rights. And that's why the Civil War was really fought. When you really look at it and boil it down to basics, it was about states' rights and state sovereignty. So, and isn't it interesting, guys, that, those were states' rights issues in the 1860s, and we're seeing it again today. If you guys go to whitehouse.gov, you will see I want to say like 18 states now. There's petitions on whitehouse.gov for 18 states to secede from the Union. Man, it's interesting. These things have thousands of signatures. You need 25,000, I think, or so in a month's time in order for this to advance. I don't even know what it advances to or what have you. But I am I'm actually encouraged by that. And John,
what states do you guys have a list?
Yeah, I've got them right here. But John pointed me to it. And how'd you go about finding that, John?
I just found that when I was doing some research this morning on Drudge, on the drudgereport.com. But I also, in looking into it from the whitehouse.gov guys, Louisiana is one of the states, and I looked at the list. They got about 8,000 signatures, and some of the signatures are from people from Texas, Colorado, California. Look, folks, if you're not from that state, it doesn't really matter if you sign. And another thing, that's the fastest and most surest way to get you put on that no-fly list.
Yeah, you think?
and to ask the president or the United States government to petition them to do something bad is about the most ludicrous thing. Yeah, they're going to give you permission to withdraw.
Right on.
Okay?
So...
go ahead, Joe.
Basically...
Wait, are you guys trying to say that if someone signs their name...
Are you there?
Are you trying to say that if someone signs their name to a petition, they'll end up on a no-fly list?
No, but think about it, because this is the first thing that I thought about, too. This isn't just a petition. This is petitions.whitehouse.gov that they're doing this on. So when you sign your name to it, they're like, oh, this guy wants to secede, does he? Whoop, put him on this list here. There you go. So, I mean,
how about I want to petition the TSA to take their fist out of my ass the next time I fly? Think that's going to work? I doubt it.
I doubt it.
You know they're getting a uniform allowance increase
basically
now?
what it says is, we petition the Obama administration peaceably grant the state of North Carolina to withdraw from the United States and create its own new government. And it goes on, and there's a little petition, but that's what it says. Now, on here there is, let's see. I know we're up against...
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Joe seems to be having internet issues just as he comes back in from break. So let me try to bring him back. Joe, are you back with us now?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
What the hell happened over here?
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Yeah, now did everybody go offline or what?
No, just you.
Oh, fantastic. I love it. That's great.
Just as we came in from break, the bumper faded down, and all of a sudden it was like, bye, Joe. Boop.
That Skype Kick app I downloaded works real well.
Yeah, that's great. well, let's see. Where did we leave off?
With General Smedley Butler.
Right, so Smedley Butler, right? Talk about a courageous guy. Totally fed up with capitalism because of what they made him do. Here again is somebody that was doing this under good intentions, all the I'm doing this for my country and everything else, and then he gets thrown into all of these just off-the-wall duties, and a lot of it having to do with protecting corporate interests. So does that have to do with anything? It should be the Army's job or what? No, of course not. Marines, no. And so he gets fed up. But these guys, apparently these elitists don't know that. But boy, they sure did get the memo, didn't they? So
they got the memo all right.
That was Smedley Butler. Now the next audio clip is another person that warned us about what was going to happen based on his experience. And that's Dwight Eisenhower. Now in his farewell address, he addresses what he sees as probably the biggest threat to our society. Here it is.
On occasion, Eisenhower was heard to say by those in the room, God help this country when somebody sits at this desk who doesn't know as much about the military as I do.
My fellow Americans, this evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development. Yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
And so that was Dwight Eisenhower. Now, of course, everybody knows he was the general that oversaw all the operations in Europe during World War II, and then went on to become the president of the United States. He was Supreme Allied Commander. I mean, he knew the threat to society. He knew about all this kind of stuff. And that's why at the beginning, the woman that was talking about Eisenhower said, gosh, I fear the day that somebody sits in this seat that doesn't know the military like I do, and that speaks volumes. And again, he warned us. He warned everybody about what would happen, if the military-industrial complex gets to run amok. And that's exactly what's happened. Look at how much, guys, look at how much we spend every year on military compared to the rest of the world.
True.
It's amazing.
Considering he knew about all the dirty laundry of World War II, because he partook in some of it, I would say that he did have an insider's perspective on things. I don't think he's a saint. I mean, I've played the same audio, so I'm not trying to vilify him or make him a deity of any sort. But he was correct in certain things. He definitely did have, I would say, an insider's perspective. I'm sure he knew about the powers that be behind the scenes. I don't think there was any illusions, you know what I mean? Even if he didn't allude, you know what I mean? I think that's who he was alluding to with when he says the military-industrial complex. I don't think he just, I think he knows it doesn't stop there, but that was his way of at least pointing people in the right direction.
Right. No, I agree. There was definitely some knowledge there. But again, you know, it doesn't matter who it comes from. The fact is it was thrown out there. I mean, and not by some chump. You know, we're talking about Eisenhower here. So, you know, very credible and definitely a sound warning and something that we've seen in history play itself out. So, I mean, it's not, I don't know. I'm very disappointed that people just fail to see the warning signs time and time again, and all in the interest of what? You know, how have we benefited from any of this? Guys, do you feel like you've benefited from this imperialism?
John was just telling me during the break he feels safer, right, John? Don't you feel safer now?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I think going overseas and pissing off all those people over there and interfering in their governments and what they do in their daily lives is probably the worst idea our government's ever had.
Well, I certainly don't condone it, but apparently, you know, this is I remember back to, you know, the modern Navy is really based on this one book, and that's Sea Power by Alfred Thayer Mahan. And if you go back and you read it, what it talks about is you have to have the world's strongest Navy to protect national interests. That's what it all comes down to. That's how they get away with all this crap, is you're protecting national interests. That's what Smedley Butler was doing when he was in China and he was down in Central America and South America, and he was all over the place protecting national interests because those corporations were so big that should they fail or be toppled or be impeded by you know, another sovereign nation wanting to do whatever, that it would negatively affect our economy because they were that big. You know, that was the monopolies at the time. And here we are again. You know, we've gone full circle. And now what do we have here, guys? We have too big to fail banks and institutions. That's what they tell us. And then what do we have to do? Oh, we have to bail them out. We do.
Yeah, because it's my responsibility that these douchebags went out and made really horrible decisions. And then, you know, of course, you know, all the poor people should back them up, right? I mean, everybody, all the people that actually work for a living and don't make retarded decisions like that, well, I guess they have to pay for the decisions of people that, let's not forget how much money these people already have. But the reason they stay that rich, Joe, is because they don't gamble with their own money. Oh, no, no, no. They gamble with your money, my money, and everybody else's.
I don't think there's a such thing as too big to fail. I think we should let them fail. We should make our government let them fail. Because when it all comes down, what do we have? New banks will open in the ashes of the old banks, and we would have learned a lesson. What are we teaching them by bailing them out? We're giving them more money, and they're shipping that money overseas, offshore, and it's not coming back into this country. And we, by bailing them out, are creating the problem that we're in today.
You know what the conundrum is, though, guys? The conundrum is this: that the people don't perceive the debt as applying to them. That's the problem, and it's a shame. But that's where we are.
Well, they don't understand it. They don't understand that in this game.
No, it's like monopoly money to them.
Well, technically, let's get something straight. Everybody always says, how do you solve the national debt? You could solve it in 2 minutes. You tell the Federal Reserve to kick rocks. And when everybody says, well, if you do that, what about China? What about all these other countries?
They bought Federal Reserve bonds. They didn't buy bonds from us. They bought bonds from the Fed, a private corporation of banks. You deal with it. It's not our problem. There goes the debt.
That's right, folks. We'll be right back in about 3 minutes. Don't go away. Last segment of hour number 1 coming up. Orion Talk Radio says, put your activism where your mouth is. Make a truth banner with a creative message to display in public. Make sure you mention Orion Talk Radio somewhere on the sign, then take a picture of yourself and send it to us at oriontalkradio@gmail.com. We'll post your picture on our new activism page and show the world your message, so get the word out. Joe Joseph here, along with my good buddy Popeye, federaljack.com and Down the Rabbit Hole, and my good friend John King, who will be offering up his King's Court at the beginning of hour number 2. And so this time around, Popeye, you're going to play a clip now from, what's the guy's name again?
His name's Mike Preisner. He's a member of
Preisner, yes.
Iraq Veterans Against the War.
Yes, very, very, very powerful sound clip that's coming up, and another good organization that I think you belong to, right, Popeye?
Yes, sir. And I haven't. I know lately they've gone a little bit kind of lefty or whatever, and people bash them for it. But as a whole, I appreciate what these guys are doing, because they help out all the soldiers that have gone AWOL because of the wars and everything else. I mean, they're the only ones out there that I see actually organizing things like Winter Soldier, where they've all sat down and talked about the things that they experienced. And I mean, it's powerful testimony. I've aired it before. In fact, that's where this clip of Mike came from one of the Winter Soldier testimonies. It's powerful stuff, dude.
Well, good. Go ahead and play it and give people a taste of that.
All right, here, check this out.
And I tried hard to be proud of my service, but all I could feel was shame. And racism could no longer mask the reality of the occupation. These were people. These were human beings. I've since been plagued by guilt anytime I see an elderly man, like the one who couldn't walk, who he rolled onto a stretcher and told the Iraqi police to take him away. I feel guilt anytime I see a mother with her children, like the one who cried hysterically and screamed that we are worse than Saddam as we forced her from her home. I feel guilt anytime I see a young girl, like the one I grabbed by the arm and dragged into the street. We are told we are fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me, and the real terrorism is this occupation. Racism within the military has long been an important tool to justify the destruction and occupation of another country. It has long been used to justify the killing, subjugation, and torture of another people. Racism is a vital weapon employed by this government. It is a more important weapon than a rifle, a tank, a bomber, or a battleship. It is more destructive than an artillery shell, or a bunker buster, or a Tomahawk missile. While all those weapons are created and owned by this government, they are harmless without people willing to use them. Those who send us to war do not have to pull a trigger or lob a mortar round. They do not have to fight the war, they merely have to sell the war. They need a public who is willing to send their soldiers into harm's way. They need soldiers who are willing to kill and be killed without question. They can spend millions on a single bomb, but that bomb only becomes a weapon when the ranks in the military are willing to follow orders to use it. They can send every last soldier anywhere on earth, but there will only be a war if soldiers are willing to fight. And the ruling class, the billionaires who profit from human suffering, who care only about expanding their wealth, controlling the world economy, understand that their power lies only in their ability to convince us that war, oppression, and exploitation is in our interest. They understand that their wealth is dependent on their ability to convince the working class to die to control the market of another country. And convincing us to kill and die is based on their ability to make us think that we are somehow superior. Soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen have nothing to gain from this occupation. The vast majority of people living in the U.S. have nothing to gain from this occupation. In fact, not only do we have nothing to gain, but we suffer more because of it. We lose limbs, endure trauma, and give our lives. Our families have to watch flag-draped coffins lowered into the earth. Millions in this country without health care, jobs, or access to education must watch this government squander over $450 million a day on this occupation. Poor and working people in this country are sent to kill poor and working people in another country to make the rich richer. And without racism, soldiers would realize that they have more in common with the Iraqi people than they do with the billionaires who send us to war. I threw families onto the street in Iraq, only to come home and find families thrown onto the street in this country, in this tragic and unnecessary foreclosure crisis. We need to wake up and realize that our real enemies are not in some distant land. They're not people whose names we don't know and cultures we don't understand. The enemy is people we know very well and people we can identify. The enemy is a system that wages war when it's profitable. The enemy is the CEOs who lay us off from our jobs when it's profitable. It's the insurance companies who deny us health care when it's profitable. It's the banks who take away our homes when it's profitable. Our enemy is not 5,000 miles away. They are right here at home. And if we organize and fight with our sisters and brothers, we can stop this war, we can stop this government, and we can create a better world.
Hoorah! Man, that's speaking the truth, baby. Ain't that right? I mean, why aren't there more people that have the backbone to be able to say the things that need to be said? You know? Oh, that was refreshing.
You can go to ivaw.org and buy the book, the Winter Soldier Testimonies. And I think they actually have all of them on DVD now. They're up on YouTube, too. I have them up on one of my channels. You just look up IVAW on YouTube or Google it or whatever, and you can watch a lot of the testimony. It's powerful stuff. I've played it on air. I've had people emailing me during the broadcast telling me that I brought them to tears and stuff, listening to some of the stuff that they were hearing. And I'm not talking about just regular civilians, Joe. I'm talking about combat-hardened guys.
Right on. No, no.
Because they understood. They knew what these guys were going through. So it's some pretty powerful stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, if you support war, if you support endless killing and drone strikes and all this other crap, if you want to send your kid to go fight in a war for these people, before you do, just take a couple hours and go listen to their testimonies. I guarantee you'll never send your child ever.
Yeah,
ever.
That's a fact. And I also want to say that, there needs to be more people like this. Like, for example, other vets here that have really gone out of the way and made a difference. You had Adam Kokesh that was really integral in bringing about the original Tea Party movement. Ron Paul, of course, a veteran of the Air Force and tireless defender of liberty. And then Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers. Always out there, always saying things, always getting that message out, and always talking about who the real enemy is. And that's what's so important, is to highlight these vets as they are truly trying to make a difference and are, to this day, even though not on active duty, still defending the oath, supporting. They reaffirm it every day. They live their oath.
Maybe that's why the New World Order considers our veterans terrorists, because they've gone through it and they know the truth.
Right on. I mean, that's it. All you need to do is go and experience it for yourself, and it really does. It changes your viewpoint on things. It truly, truly changes your viewpoint on things. Now, for hour number 4 of the Veterans Day special, we went forward in time from Smedley, Butler on up to today. Of course, I left out JFK. JFK, again, another one that the powers that be misunderstood. And as a result, they had to take him out because he didn't play ball. Here they're thinking, it's a Kennedy. He'll play ball. Nope. It's those times on the PT boat and his experiences as a combat veteran that led him to have these crises of conscience, I guess you could say, because it overpowered him. And as a result, he was trying to do things like dismantle the Federal Reserve. And
I think when he realized that these people were willing to start World War III and did not care, I think that had something to do with it too. He was, I think at that point he realized, oh, wow,
Yep, that's right. And Timmy Watts just Skyped in and said, don't forget the travesty that Bush and Cheney brought to our vets. The first thing they did was try to cut benefits to service families while they were starting the Afghan war and Iraq war, and they refused to honor our fallen war dead by showing any pictures of flag-draped coffins coming home.
Oh yeah, remember Barbara Bush? Why should I waste my mind on such things?
Yep, that's right. He said, put that yellow ribbon on your car and support your troops. But, yeah. Oh, horrible. It's horrible. But again, so now in hour number 2, I'm going to dial it way back, and I'm going to air a clip from another veteran. But this is a very special veteran, you see, because this veteran is Julius Howell, and Julius Howell is a Civil War veteran.
That's the gentleman you and I were talking about earlier.
Yes. So I will play the testimony of Julius Howell to give you an idea of how history has been rewritten in a very, very short period of time. And, again, it just highlights what is the real agenda? How long has it been going on for? And when you see how long this work in progress has gone, you truly understand the magnitude and scope that we're looking at in order to overcome what they've established. So it's going to take a lot of work, but you have my word that I'll do everything in my power to fight with you. So with that said, stay tuned for the news. Hour number 4 of the Veteran Special continues in just a moment. Special shout out to my partner in crime, Tim Watts, who's listening intently on tonight's broadcast, taking the night off, kicking back, and enjoying life. So hats off to you, Timmy. Well-deserved night off. And guys, before we get started with Julius Howell, we need to address, or shall we narrow that down and say, John, please address the listeners with your King's Court.
Thanks, Joe. Happy Veterans Day to all those who have served or are serving in our armed forces. A big heartfelt thank you with a never-ending gratitude sent your way. It takes a selfless person to offer so much and willing to pay that ultimate sacrifice to keep us safe from a violent world. For those of you that have woken up, I can't help but wonder if you would have served if you knew then what you know now. With the ongoing violence in the world, knowing it is different factions of the Illuminati infighting, is it right that we should sacrifice our sons and daughters on the altar of Moloch in the name of world domination and expanding our global empire? Rome fell when it became too fat to support itself and had very little resources to sustain it. We faced the same fate, with over 600 military bases and a dozen wars globally and a national debt of over 16 trillion and a fiscal cliff that threatens our very existence if it is not averted. There is talk of raising the debt ceiling to 18.5 trillion to as much as 20 trillion so that we, that is the United States, can maintain its military might. Other countries, such as China and Germany, are worried about the gold that we're holding for them. Or should I say, we were holding for them. Suckers! As I look across the globe, I see the austerity being imposed upon an unwilling people. And as the moon rises here and the sun rises in the Middle East, I close my eyes and send prayers of safekeeping your way to that great litter box and hope that there is a country for you when you return, when your contract is over. Till then, I salute you. Joe, back to you.
Thank you very much, John. And John, of course, a regular here on the Orion Talk Radio Network, always welcome on the Freedom Link. And guys, I think it's appropriate now to dial back the clock a little bit, and I'm going to play for everybody the testimony. This is an actual Civil War veteran, okay? And you can look up Julius Howell as he ended up being a chancellor of a university. I don't have his bio pulled up right now, but when he did this interview, I want to say he was in his 90s. So this was recorded in the right in and around 1930s or so, or 1944. I'm sorry, but I mean this guy's in his late 90s, like 98. Here he is, Julius Howell, Civil War veteran.
This is quite a distinct honor that I'm now enjoying, speaking to the public in this splendid building and on a subject that has been given to me carte blanche. I understand from the doctor here present that I can talk about almost any subject that interests me, but I understand the public must be interested also. I have the inclination, however, to go back to my early boyhood. I go back as far as way along in the early 50s.
And he's talking 1850s.
My first recollection of public living, and especially political living, as I may call it, was when I learned as a boy of 9 or 10 that my home was in the state of Virginia. I didn't know about states before that time. Then time passed, and 1860, why, the Democratic Party and the Whig Party were the prominent parties of that day. In fact, in size, the other parties, one or two of them, did not number very largely. I remember very well the Democrats and Republicans and Whigs in my neighborhood were not hostile to each other. They were friendly, but each stuck for his own candidate. I remember Breckinridge, not Breckinridge, but Buchanan of Pennsylvania and Breckinridge of Kentucky were the candidates for the Democrats that year. And Fillmore and Donaldson were the candidates for the Whigs. The first flagpole I saw was erected in my neighborhood, and I looked upon it with a good deal of reverence when I saw that large American flag floating in the breeze, and the names, Fillmore and Donaldson. If I make little mistakes along here, the public will forgive. About that time, in fact, in that connection, there was a slight dark cloud that began to arise from the north. It was talked among my elders. What party is that? That's the Republican Party. Well, they didn't give it a very good name to my boyhood. And little did I think, of course, that it became the ruling party of this nation later on. Time passed pretty rapidly because I was attending high school, and I remember distinctly the occasion when the John Brown, the poor man, sought freedom for the slaves. He's there in my state. I heard about it pretty distinctly. I felt sorry, and yet sympathizing with my elders, I felt some resentment. Now, while some in my section, Southeast Virginia, I knew of some brutality, as I call it, exercised toward some of the Negro slaves, as a whole, the Negroes got along very well. Now, my father's Negroes, why I associated with them. In fact, being the baby of the family, I didn't have any white children for associates. Therefore, I played around with the Negro children. Time came along. 4 years passed by. Then came up the great struggle when the Republican Party had become a power in the land. The Democrats nominated Buchanan and Breckinridge. Wait, if I get that mixed a little bit, I had it clear ordinarily. Anyhow, in 1860, Mr. Lincoln was elected, as you know. And I remember that there was a good deal of excitement in my section that the Negro slavery would be interfered with. Niggers would be set free and all that. Well, I didn't feel much interest about it because I felt kindly toward the Dockers, and they were kindly toward me and toward my family. Now, I was attending school, as I said, and when in the spring of 61, when news came that war was actually declared. In fact, it had been coming when South Carolina, as we heard, seceded from the Union. Well, wonder now what Mr. Lincoln will do when he is seated on the presidential chair.
We're going to stop it right there, and we'll continue it after the break. Now, I know, of course, you guys hear those words that just aren't socially acceptable anymore, but you have to understand, when this was recorded back in 1941, in the 40s, early 40s, this was still very socially acceptable language. And
well, even if it wasn't, he was born in like 1850.
1840s, actually. He was born in the 1840s because he served during the Civil War.
Well,
and was
there you go, dude.
POW.
So that was just lexicon at the time.
But I mean, this is stuff you need to hear. You have to hear it in its entirety, unedited, so you could just take in the history, folks. I mean, this is history speaking to you. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back, folks. Don't forget that the Veterans Day special continues after the Freedom Links Conspiracy Chronicles. We go over to Ken's broadcast, and Popeye and I will be joining Ken over on the Information Nation for hours number 5 and 6. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But more history from Civil War veteran Julius Howell. Here he is.
Well, there was a variety of feeling about it, even among our 75 or 100 young men, boys, at school. But right at once, when war was declared, about half of our pupils, young men over 18, quit school, joined companies of infantry, cavalry, and in their homes, in surrounding counties, and in that vicinity. I wanted to go too, but my father said, "Now, son, you're too young." I was just 15, just a little past. And if the war continues long enough, you may have an opportunity. Well, so I rested. And the war began, and I heard about it. And I heard that at the Battle of Williamsburg, some of my classmates fell in the battle there. Well, I grieved about that because they were boys that I'd been brought up with. They were a little older than I, but I felt sorry that they were killed. Then, in 62, although General Lee had still a pretty good army, he began to need more men, naturally. Although the big battles, or the largest battles, had not come yet. But my neighbors around there, some of them who were over 45, kinsmen of mine, some of them, began to just get up a company of cavalry. And I, a boy of 16 and a half years old, joined the cavalry company, which afterwards was attached and counted with others among the 24th Virginia Cavalry. Now, the war for a long time then, from August 62 on until 64, great battles had been fought in there. We heard of the Battle of Gettysburg. And finally, our camp company was taken away from the Blackwater border, guarding that section of the country from the incursions of federal soldiers who might cross the Blackwater River and the Chuan and come over into Confederate territory. I beg pardon. We were taken in the spring of '64, our regiment was, in the neighborhood of Petersburg. And while we were camped just north of Petersburg, General Grant began his invasion of that part of Virginia. We heard about it, and I remember very distinctly, one morning we heard that General Lee had crossed James up north and was coming down the Turnpike Road in the direction of Petersburg, just near us. And the next morning, happening to look while I was on guard, across the James River, there we saw long lines of blue. The infantry of the Army and the United States flags on the other side of the James, coming down to beyond the mouth of the Appomattox River that flows into the James, in order to cross on the pontoon bridges and thus begin the invasion of that part of Virginia and in the city of Petersburg. Thus, I was not, well, I beg pardon saying thus, I was not with that part of the army. My regiment was moved up north of Virginia, of Richmond, I mean, north of Richmond, and thus we guarded that city for several months while General Lee and General Grant were struggling there near Petersburg. While that was going on, there were some skirmishes and one, small battle I was in. I was not in any of the larger battles, probably fortunately, maybe unfortunately. Well, General Ewell commanded the General Lee's corps near Richmond. And I remember we were called up one day and took the Darbytown Road, and some mile or two, I don't know, we never counted distances or time in those days. And we turned off from the road, Maiden Road, and went down a road through a wood. After a while, came to an opening, and there was a line of blue boys and some artillery. And we charged them, and that's where I was struck the first and only time in my leg, which laid me up 2 months. I was sent home on furlough. Now, I want to bring in one or two little points there that might be of interest to some. We were around Richmond, my regiment was, all the time then, on doing little of nothing, while that war was still going on. And after a while, a Saturday evening, the first day of April, 1865, we were ordered, and by the way, in the meantime, about half of my regiment had lost their horses. The Confederate soldiers owned their own horses, and when they lost a horse, it was difficult at that stage to secure a substitute. Anyhow, I lost mine. I've forgotten just now how. I don't believe it was in battle, however, at that time. Now, orders came for a dismounted part, or demounted, I might say, of the regiment to fall in line and march. We stopped on the way and spent the night. That is Saturday night. The next day was a beautiful day, Sunday. We didn't know what was going on. We were within a mile of Richmond, and there was a turmoil there. And that day, as you all know, that day, the President Davis was attending his usual services at his church, St. Paul's Church. Right in the midst of the sermon, the front door opened, and a courier rushed in and went up to President Davis, handed him the paper. He opened it, and it was a dispatch from General Lee saying, Mr. President, I am so heavily pressed by the enemy that I'm compelled to abandon Petersburg. Mr. Davis arose and left, and the congregation broke up, and in a few minutes almost, there was pandemonium then in Richmond. We marched out of Richmond early the next morning on the 3rd and started in a southeasterly direction. We didn't know which way nor where we were going, but afterwards it showed that we were attempting, under General Ewell's command, to come in contact with General Lee.
All right, so right now they're, God, I mean, to live in that time, I mean, unbelievable to just get a picture.
Did you hear the balls this guy had, dude? He's we saw a bunch of blue guys, what do you call them? Blue boys?
Blue coats.
He's like, blue, we saw a line of blue boys.
And so he charged them with his horse. Like, wow. I mean, it's unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. Folks, don't go away, because as this continues, we're going to hear how Julius actually goes to battle in defense of Richmond and becomes a prisoner of war. And he's going to talk a little bit about about the Lincoln assassination and what it meant to them. So very interesting to hear this straight from the horse's mouth from somebody who lived during that time. Welcome back, folks, to the Veterans Day special here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm Joe Joseph, along with Popeye of FederalJack.com and Down the Rabbit Hole. And John King, the man, the myth, the legend. And, folks, the entire 6-hour Veterans Day special will be up on YouTube here in the coming days. So if you've missed it, or you're not listening right now, you can't hear me, but if you could, you can always get it on YouTube. I crack myself up sometimes, guys. Anyway, let's get back to the testimony of Julius Howell, Civil War veteran.
Down southwest of Petersburg. Well, the Federals under General Sheridan overtook us, our command of about 3,000, in Amelia County, Virginia, and after fighting several hours, General Ewell surrendered us, and thus I became a captive. I went to prison along with this command, and we landed in Point Lookout, Maryland, down here. And the day after we reached there, as a curious boy, I rose pretty early. We just gotten there the afternoon before. I rose pretty early and went out to see how things looked around in there. There were 20,000 of us, a large encampment. Happened to look across in one direction, I don't know which. Well, there was a flagpole and a flag on it just rising. I stopped and looked at it with curiosity. It stopped when it got halfway. Well, I knew what halfway flag on a pole meant. I looked at it. I thought, well, the rope that handles that flag must have a nut in it, and I'll see a man presently going up that pole to untangle it. I waited a whole minute, and I casually turned my face in another direction, and there was another flagpole with flag half-mast already. So I put my head in the tent. There were 5, 6 others of us. I was, boys, there must be some big Yankee dead. I wonder who it can be. Of course, we had no means of knowing. And then we waited for about an hour. The sergeant blew a bugle. We are...
Uh-oh, Joe cut out. Joe, you there? We lost Joe for a second, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see if I can get him back. Joe, you there?
1,000 men in just that one. Of course, there were several other prisons, as you know. But as for me, and a boy, just 19, I didn't know what to think. I couldn't feel any hatred toward Mr. Lincoln, especially. I didn't feel any special hatred toward any federal soldier. And when I began to think how kindly General Grant afterwards, on the 9th, well, this was just before, acted toward General Lee, I felt kindly toward him. Now, comes up the question of what we Southern soldiers fought for.
This is the biggie.
My friends, as a boy of 16 and a half years old, I didn't think about any abolition of slavery. My mind wasn't developed enough to take in what the politicians had in mind, and hence there was no trouble as to the freedom of the slaves. About half of the Negroes, my father's Negroes, left and went to Norfolk to be under, as they considered, protection, but another half, 40, 50 of them, remained and cultivated the crops until after the war. The South did not fight for the preservation or extension of slavery. General Lee, as is well known, was making arrangements to free his Negroes, and his father-in-law had already drawn up a part of his will, free his Negroes. My friend, it was a great curse on this country that we had slavery, and I thank God that I did not bring up my boys and girls under a system of slavery under which I was brought under. What did you boys fight for then? Here's what great many people do not know. That as a young man that way, I couldn't understand it fully. But I look back now and see my part in it and saw what we struggled for. And that was for states' rights. For states' rights. And as many of you know, immediately after the war, the rights of the various states, well, especially in the South, were very much curtailed, if I may use that word. And since then, I have noticed you let things come up that encroach on the ordinary states' rights, which we have preserved, and we find that the North, the boys that wore the blue are with us in preservation of the states' rights that we enjoyed. Now, I want to mention a point there. Oh, yes. A good many people never think about the states' rights. We have so many rights and so much. But here is one thing. Now, I say this with great reverence, and probably I ought not to mention it because the poor man is dead now. But when President Lincoln, not Lincoln, but President Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt, I voted for him every time, and I'm proud of it. But Mr. Roosevelt did one thing that was exactly contrary to states' rights, and that is this. That is, from my viewpoint, at a time when some of those Democrats didn't agree with him in his views, and the Governor George, Senator, I believe it was, Senator George of Georgia, didn't please Mr. Roosevelt, and he tried to get the state of Georgia to vote Mr. George out. Well, they didn't do it. Come on up. The state of Maryland had, I've forgotten Tidings, I think the senator's name, he may have been a congressman. He didn't suit Mr. Roosevelt. Roosevelt tried to get that state to put him out. They declined to do it. The state of Pennsylvania had Senator Duffy, I believe it was, or McDuffie, I've forgotten. And Mr. Roosevelt wanted him put out. And the state of Iowa had, I've forgotten the senator's name. There were 4 instances that Mr. Roosevelt, whom I regard as one of our greatest presidents and whom I love in his tomb, but he there violated what we Southern men stood for, and that was states' rights, and he was sat down upon, and very properly so. Now, my friends, I talked already long enough. I might say, with regard to Well, if I'm pushing a little bit, please forgive. I was in the so-called Civil War. The ladies of the South don't like to call that Civil War. Well, I'll not comment on that. They like the expression, the war between the states. I engaged in that myself. Then, when the Spanish-American War came along, I had a son who belonged to the United States Army. He engaged in that war and was wounded at San Juan Hill. Then the First World War came along. He had been promoted and was a colonel and in France and served on the staff of General Liggett, who was one of General Pershing's generals. Then the Second War came on, and here came my grandsons called upon, and I had four boys, all the way from lieutenant colonel down to lieutenant. I should not probably mention my own personal affairs because the public generally don't care anything about that. So many other folks had more. I don't know what else to talk about, my friend. I don't know whether I've touched upon the subject, Doctor, that was desired.
About your name and birth, the date of your birth and your name.
Yes. Doctor, I was born on the 17th day of January, 1846, and my father, looking over his considerable family, he had been reading Roman history, I think, although he was quite a student generally. And he decided that Julius Caesar was a considerable man. So hoping that I'd be somebody, why, he named me Julius, a name that I have never liked very much. And I didn't like Julius Caesar when I got up old enough to study his commentary. well, he observed that I was born on...
So that's the... Welcome back, folks. Last segment of the broadcast. You know, history is always interesting, especially when you talk with veterans. But, you know, Popeye, you brought up a good, just to put it in perspective, Julius was born in 1846.
I mean, dude, the country, when he was born, it wasn't even 70 years old yet because, the birth date technically is in July, right? That's what we officially celebrate it. He was born in January of that year. So the country was 69 and a half years old when this guy was born. I'll repeat that. The country wasn't even 70 years old from its, officialdom as the United States of America, 1776, blah, blah, blah. The country wasn't even 70 years old when this guy was born. And like I said to Joe, it puts it in perspective when you hear him talking about it. He's like, well, my kid served in the Spanish, in American War and World War I. And you're like, holy crap. My grandkids served in World War II. And, to me, like I was telling you, dude, when I was a kid, I was a firefighter. I was a lot of the guys in my department were old World War II vets. They were old when I was a kid, when I was like 18, 19 years old. Okay, a lot of them are dead now.
That's right.
They were his grandkids.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
and
holy crap.
He was 98 years old when he recorded that. It was in 1944 that he recorded that. He was 98 years old. So just a good tidbit of history. I got one more short little clip, historical. I'm going to play you the last broadcast in Marseille, France, as France fell to the Germans. Here we go. Isn't that interesting? So that's what happened. See, what happened was during that time, of course, France was falling, and everybody was leaving. They were hightailing it, and the story goes that just like we kind of stand up in the face of what the New World Order or however you want to call it, this broadcast, this guy stayed and was summarily, he was taken off the air and he was taken care of. But he stood by and he sang the French national anthem just until the Germans came in and took over Germany. Isn't that interesting?
Dude, that's incredible. I never even heard of that.
Yeah, and it shows just the dedication that some people have, and
shows the chutzpah or the balls.
Well, that's the thing. And you don't need to be a veteran to have those marbles or anything like that. As a matter of fact, all that what being a veteran does is it gives you a unique perspective, because you actually have to go over to these places and do the dirty work. And when you see what you're doing, it's kind of hard to refute, So, hey, John King, you've been silent. Any thoughts on tonight's topics?
Yes, I'm getting rather frustrated with Popeye. He's bogarting them freedom fries.
You can't have any freedom fries. They're all mine, John.
All I want to say is that I'm very humbled to live in this once great country, this constitutional republic, this burgeoning democracy, to be amongst the greatest of people, the greatest of heroes this humanity has ever known.
Well, thanks, pal.
Gracias,
wow.
John.
I'm all tingly.
Right? What are you getting, like Chris Matthews?
Oh, I got a tingle going up my leg here.
Friggin' tingles up your leg now?
Oh, tingle.
That was my dog.
Hey, Joe, really quick, say that vet's name again, the Civil War guy, because
that was Julius Howell. I think he was a corporal in the Southern the Rebel Army, the Confederates,
the Confederate Army, the evil Confederate Army.
Again, that just shows you it's not the way you're taught. It's not what to history. The victors write the history, right? So. That's the thing that you have to understand. And so the history itself was manipulated.
Dude, remember what I told you about? I met a kid that graduated a couple years ago, right after, like maybe a month or two after she had graduated high school. And she was at this restaurant. She was a hostess at this restaurant I worked at. And all the staff, we used to give DVDs out and stuff. And they used to go to Federal Jack. And we were talking about the JFK assassination one night. And she goes, he was assassinated? And I said, yeah, he had his head blown off in Dealey Plaza. Like, don't you pay attention to history? And what are they teaching you? She goes, well, they just said that he died in office. I was like, they didn't tell you what caused his death? It was a large metal projectile hitting him in the forehead? And she's like, no, they just said he died in office. I mean, to me, that was amazing. And I mean, I understand they rewrite history, especially now, because that was years ago when she told me this. But it's just, look, they can change whatever they want. Like you said, most people have no clue what the Civil War was fought over. They have no idea.
That's right.
They actually think it's slavery. They think, well, we freed black people, and that's Abraham Lincoln did it. By the way, the only reason he did that was a political move. Because, see, if he said, well, we're fighting this war to free the slaves, then the British and the French, okay, who were waiting to come in and clean up what was left of the United States, well, they can't come in and really help, right? They can't help the South, especially because that would really look bad, in the age of, they're all supposed to be enlightened and, civil and all this crap. You politically, that would be really bad, right? I mean, why would you want to stop this country from freeing people? What is wrong with you? So they couldn't be seen to be backing somebody who. So he did that. That's all that was for. He has. There's even quotes of Lincoln saying that if he could win the war without freeing the slaves, he would. So let's not make him out. I'm not trying to vilify him or anything, but let's be honest about history.
That's right. You have to really do the digging. And I had an English teacher, my 11th grade English teacher, I think he was, and. Or maybe my senior year. I can't remember. I don't even remember his name. I just remember he had a Bob Ross fro. And he always wanted us to read books like Brave New World. And always preaching knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. I remember him grinding it in my head. And, you know, as a high schooler, you're like, what? This guy's nuts, man. Come on. But boy, I look back on that, and he was probably the most powerful teacher that I ever had. And he's absolutely right. You have to know the history, the true history behind these events, these world events, behind these families that run things in this world. You have to do the homework. It's like we say about rights. How can you defend your rights if you don't know your rights? Well, how can you change the course of things and the course of society and human events if you don't know the history? You have to educate yourself. And that's why everybody listening to this broadcast and everybody that's out there fighting the fight, you have to really be students of history if we're going to make this thing work. Knowledge is truly power. And so our number 4 is coming to a close. Boys, any closing thoughts?
History is written by the victors, and we're getting our asses kicked.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Good night, guys.
Good night, John.
Good night, John. I just hope people learn from history. I mean, if you pay attention even to any bit of this broadcast, I hope people go back, and I'll have it up on YouTube in the next few days. I'll put it on my channel and on the Orion channel, so it'll be up in 2 spots for everybody to listen to for everybody's convenience. And I'm sure Tim will load it up on the front of the page on the site. And I hope you listen to some of the audio we've played so far. And we still got 2 more hours, by the way.
2 more hours. Yeah, I don't know. Now, Ken Hildebrand takes the reins of the Veterans Day special as I hand the baton off to him, and Popeye and I are kind of like...
Yeah, now it's nice because Joe and I get to give the keys to the vehicle to Ken, and we get to sit in the back seat and put our feet up and just drink our coffee. Ken has to control things. But that's okay. I guess our training, trained us, our military training prepared us for a 6-hour broadcast. I think that's the least we could do, right?
Yeah. No, I know.
It's like serving the country still.
It is. It is, but even more important than that, you can't, I know people that say, oh, well, shame on the troops for not, doing their constitutional duty to lay down their arms or do this. No, you know what? You have to fight to inform them, to do the best you can. I can't fault them for doing what they do, and I just
all I'll say is, how are they supposed to lay their lives down like that?
And they're in the shit.
Well,
right.
even the ones that want to, when back home, there's nobody that would back them up, and if they did that, they would be rounded up and thrown in jail. And the general public right now is so asleep that it wouldn't work. So
right, and in a time of war too, understand that stuff is punishable by death.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, there's it's a tough thing. Very, very tough thing. So really, guys, if ladies and gentlemen, just if you know anybody that's a veteran in your family, that's a friend of yours, just tip your cap to them and tell them how much you appreciate their service. Folks, that's the broadcast